Chapter 3494. Chapter 3489. Chapter 348. A battle of flesh and blood roar. High up in the sky, the huge black wolf let out a bellow as its dark aura skyrocketed. Then, it swung its huge paw, and several sharp black blades appeared out of thin air, each of which was filled with killing intent as they slashed towards Nyetian. Nyetian frowned, and his expression was very ugly. Under such circumstances, he couldn't avoid it at all, and could only take it head-on. Divine Demon Body, open. In an instant, Nyetian didn't hesitate at all. The pupil power in his eyes immediately burst out, breaking through the martial body and opening the Divine Demon Body. The power of the giant black wolf was too terrifying. If Nyetian didn't open the Divine Demon Body, he would definitely be killed by the giant wolf's claw. Let's see if your wolf body is stronger, or if my fiend god body is stronger. The corners of Nyetian's mouth twitched. His figure flashed, and without dodging or dodging, he charged straight at her. Is that kid crazy? Lu Yinshan's eyes trembled when he saw this scene, and he was extremely shocked. He couldn't believe his eyes. Nyetian directly rushed over and wanted to confront the Sunlang City Lord who had opened the curse seal of the Forest Wolf. A warrior at the first level of heavenly rhythm, using his flesh and blood to fight against the curse seal of the Forest Wolf. Wasn't this courting death? One had to know that the strength of the Sunlang City Lord who had opened the curse seal of the Forest Wolf was comparable to a warrior at the third level of the Heavenly Mandate Realm, or even stronger. How could Nyetian's strength fight against the curse seal of the Forest Wolf? Boom! However, right at this moment, Nyetian punched out. Fist shadows rumbled out, and the void seemed to tremble. Boom! Then, the two terrifying forces clashed against each other, causing the space around them to tremble as if it was about to collapse. Boom! The next moment, after a muffled sound, Nyetian's figure took a few steps back, and there was a bloody wound on his chest. Even if he opened the Divine Demon Body, he still couldn't fight against the cursed seal of the Forest Wolf. Huh? Lu Yinshan saw this scene from afar, and his eyes trembled, and his face was full of shock. Nyetian faced the cursed seal of the Forest Wolf head-on, but he didn't die. He was only slightly injured. How was this possible? Lu Yinshan couldn't believe the scene in front of him. He really suspected that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Was this silver-haired young man really a first-level heavenly charm martial artist? However, in the next moment, Lu Yinshan sensed that something was amiss. He sensed that there was a dark energy within Nyetian's body that was slowly erupting and awakening. Nyetian's eyes had also turned a strange black. His eyes were as dark as a bottomless abyss. Could it be that this boy also has a curse mark in his body? Lu Yinshan frowned, and his expression suddenly changed. Did he think that Nyetian was also under a curse like the city lord of Forest Wolf City? But even so, the curse mark in Nyetian's body was still excessively powerful. A warrior at the first level of Heaven Charm was facing a Heavenly Mandate Realm powerhouse. No matter how much torture he had to endure, it seemed to be worth it. Lu Yinshan didn't know that the power Nyetian was using at the moment was not a curse mark, but the power of his bloodline. However, Nyetian hadn't fully mastered the bloodline power of the God Demon Body. Moreover, the side effects of the God Demon Body were also great. Every time it was activated, the martial body would have a period of weakness. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Nyetian wouldn't use the God Demon Body. Boom! 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 At this time, there was a constant muffled sound in the void, and the surrounding void trembled as if it would collapse at any time. The figure of a man and a wolf collided with each other high in the sky. This was a battle of flesh and blood, a confrontation of physical strength, an absolute bloody battle between the strong and the weak. But it was obvious that Nyetian's strength was weaker than the Forest Wolf curse seal of the Forest Wolf City Lord. Even though his God Demon Body was strong, his strength was too weak after all, and he couldn't exert the true power of the God Demon Body. As for the god-demon body of the forest wolf city lord, the power of his wolf body became stronger and stronger. Boom! At this time, another muffled sound rang out, and Nietion's figure was sent flying thousands of meters away. One of his star souls appeared behind him, and he barely stabilized himself. He was hit head-on by the forest wolf curse seal, and his sternum was directly cracked, and his entire body was about to fall apart. This guy is about to go berserk. Nietion stabilized his body, and his eyes darkened as he looked at the forest wolf city lord, his expression extremely unsightly. He could feel that the power of the forest wolf city lord was rapidly becoming stronger, which made the forest wolf curse seal stronger and stronger. On the body of the giant wolf, a violent power surged, and the surrounding space was filled with a bloody power. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded, reminding Nietion, hold on a little longer. This guy will soon be unable to withstand the power of the cursed seal in his body, and he will directly self-destruct. Nietion nodded, and his eyes flickered with a strange light. Next, he planned to avoid the frontal attack and waste time with the forest wolf curse seal. Although the god-fiend body had a certain impact on his divine sense, he had the eternal night demon fox, so his divine sense would not lose control. Roar! At this time, the giant wolf let out a low roar, and a pair of wolf eyes as red as the dark night, incomparably ruthless. In an instant, the space within tens of thousands of meters was filled with a terrifying, murderous intent. Boom! In the next moment, the giant wolf moved like a bolt of black lightning, wildly charging towards Nietion. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly, and the wings on his back flapped, and his figure moved as fast as lightning. However, his speed was still not comparable to the giant wolf's. Although he avoided the direct attack of the giant wolf, he was still affected by the aftershock, leaving a bloody wound on his body, and blood gushed out wildly. At this time, there were already countless bloody wounds on his body, and his whole body was dripping with fresh blood. Fortunately, these wounds did not hurt his vital parts, so they were not fatal. Nietion's figure dodged left and right in the air, very nimbly, and avoided the giant wolf's attacks several times. Oh no! At this time, Lu Lianshan's expression began to become uglier and uglier, and he thought to himself, if this continues, the City Lord's forest wolf curse seal will go out of control, and the City Lord's life will be in danger. He never expected that even the forest wolf City Lord, who had activated the forest wolf curse seal, would not be able to kill Nietion after such a long time. Hurry up and get the eldest young mistress. Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled, and he exclaimed his heart. His figure moved, and he prepared to leave. Father! However, at this time, a clear voice sounded in the void, and then a woman in green appeared in the void. Her eyes flickered, and she seemed very nervous. The woman in green looked very young, but her actual age should be less than 1,000 years old. Her face was very delicate, but compared to ordinary women, it was less gentle and more heroic. Eldest young mistress. Lu Lianshan's eyes trembled when he saw the woman in green, and he exclaimed, Chapter 3495. 9 Leaves Duckweed, At this moment, Nietion also noticed the lady in green in the sky. He frowned and looked over. He was shocked. The lady in green looked very young, but she was very strong. She had reached the 8th stage of heaven rhythm. At her age, she was already at the 8th stage of heaven rhythm. Her talent was shocking. Miss. At the same time, the 8,000 forest wolf guards saw the lady in green. Their expressions changed, and they greeted her respectfully. The lady in green furrowed her brows and stared at the forest wolf city lord who was in the cursed body of the forest wolf. Roar! At that moment, the huge wolf let out a bellow and charged towards Nietion like a bolt of lightning. Stop! At the same time, the lady in green roared. 9 green leaves appeared in her hand and linked together. It was very strange. In the next moment, she struck out with her palm. Immediately, 9 green leaves enveloped the giant wolf. Like a chain, they forcefully wrapped around the giant wolf. Nietion's pupils constricted as he was taken aback by what he was seeing. It was as if the 9 green leaves contained a special power that could restrain the cursed body of the forest wolf. Roar! But in the next second, the giant wolf went berserk. With a growl, a terrifying power was released from its body, and it broke free from the green leaves. Immediately after, the giant wolf suddenly turned around and locked its murderous eyes on the woman in green. Its murderous intent was thick. "Father, it's me, Ah Xiang." The green-robed woman's beautiful eyes trembled as she shouted. Roar! But at this moment, the Forest Wolf City Lord had completely lost his mind. Instead, he growled and pounced at the lady in green. The lady in green's eyes narrowed. She tapped the ground with the tip of her foot, and several green leaves appeared under her feet. She moved like a wisp of smoke and retreated for a few thousand meters, dodging the giant wolf's attack. What a fast movement technique! Nietion's eyes trembled, and he was extremely surprised. Even after activating his fiend god body, he was unable to completely dodge the wolf's attack. However, this green-clothed woman was able to rely on her astonishing movement technique and speed to dodge the wolf's attack. It was truly too shocking. However, at this moment, the giant wolf had already gone berserk and was attacking with all its might. After a while, beads of sweat appeared on the green-clothed woman's forehead, and her movement technique slowed down a lot. Nietion frowned. It seemed that the green-clothed woman's wondrous movement technique consumed a great deal of energy and couldn't be maintained for long. If this continued, the green-clothed woman would definitely not be able to hold on. At this time, the green-robed woman was careless and was struck by a sharp blade released by the wolf's claw. A bloody wound was left on her shoulder, and blood gushed out. Eldest young lady, Lu Lianshan and the others cried out in shock when they saw this scene. Lu Lianshan and the 8,000 forest wolf guards stepped forward to help. However, at this moment, the green-clothed woman suddenly waved her hand, indicating for Lu Lianshan and the others to step back. The Forest Wolf City Lord was already in a berserk state. Lu Lianshan and the 8,000 forest wolf guards were completely useless. They would only be sending themselves to their deaths if they stepped forward. In the next moment, the green-clothed woman suddenly looked at Nietion with a glint in her eyes and said in a deep voice, "Help me." Nietion frowned and was stunned for a moment. This woman was a little interesting, asking for help so blatantly. At this moment, if Nietion didn't help, the Forest Wolf City Lord would be dead for sure, and even the green-clothed woman would be in danger. Moreover, the Forest Wolf City Lord wanted to kill Nietion just now. Could it be that Nietion wanted to help someone who wanted to kill him? At this moment, Lu Lianshan's voice rang out, and he shouted, "Kid, as long as you help eldest young lady, everything that happened before will be written off." He could tell that the only person who could help the green-clothed woman at this time was Nietion. Only if Nietion and the green-clothed woman worked together could they control the Forest Wolf City Lord. All right. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly, and the corner of his mouth twitched a little as he nodded. After all, everything happened because of him. If the Forest Wolf City Lord really died, or if he killed too many people, he would also feel uncomfortable. Help me attract his attention. The green-clothed woman looked at Nietion and said in a deep voice. Nietion nodded, and then his figure moved like a ray of light, directly rushing towards the giant wolf. Roar! The giant wolf was immediately attracted by Nietion, and with a low growl, it turned around and rushed towards Nietion. Boom! Boom! The giant wolf was extremely violent, and its 2 giant claws danced wildly in the air, attacking Nietion. Nietion frowned, and his expression changed slightly. His figure instantly retreated to avoid the frontal attack, but a few more bloody wounds appeared on his body. At this time, the green-clothed woman's eyes darkened, and the 9 green leaves in her hand rotated rapidly, forming a green sharp blade. The 9 green leaves were known as the 9 leaves duckweed, and it was a very powerful sacred weapon. The power contained within it could suppress the forest wolf curse. At this time, as long as the green-clothed woman struck the 9 leaves duckweed into the giant wolf's forehead. The latter would be able to stabilize. The green-clothed woman was very nervous. She only had one chance, and if she failed to hit the giant wolf, it would be over. At this time, Nietion's figure was dodging everywhere, causing the giant wolf to also run wildly. Under these circumstances, it was very difficult to hit the giant wolf. "Help me stabilize it. Don't move recklessly." The green-clothed woman frowned and shouted. Nietion glanced at the green-clothed woman and nodded solemnly. "Roar!" At that instant, the giant wolf let out a deep growl and pounced straight at Nietion. Nietion frowned his eyebrows, and his lips curled into a cold arc. Following this, his figure moved, and instead of dodging, he dashed toward the giant wolf. The green-clothed woman's eyes flickered, and she could not help but exclaim. She did not expect Nietion to help her stabilize the giant wolf in such a way. Bang! Bang! In the next instant, Nietion's figure collided directly with the giant wolf. 2 dull thuds were heard in the air, followed by a tremendous force. Nietion instantly felt like his bones were about to shatter into pieces. However, he did not back off and used his flesh to resist the giant wolf's attack. The air froze for a moment as the man and the wolf clashed with each other, as if time had stopped. Attack! Nietion endured the excruciating pain and yelled at the green-clothed woman. Whoosh! The green-clothed woman's eyes flickered, and she immediately made her move. The 9 leaves duckweed turned into a ray of green light and attacked the giant wolf. Puff! In the next instant, under the watchful eyes of countless people, the 9 leaves duckweed turned into a ray of green light and penetrated the giant wolf's forehead. Nietion saw the flash of green light in front of him, and his lips twitched slightly as he forced a smile. Chapter 3496. Written off. Nietion was in midair when he suddenly felt a murderous intent. His expression changed, and he was horrified. He turned around and saw the figure rushing towards him. It was Liulianshan. It turned out that the moment Nietion blocked the giant wolf, the green-robed woman was not the only one who made a move. Liulianshan also attacked. It was obvious that Liulianshan wanted to use this opportunity to kill Nietion. At this time, Nietion was entangled by the giant wolf and could not escape. Although the 9-leaf duckweed hit the giant wolf, it was not effective immediately. In an instant, Nietion fell into a hopeless situation. Die, you brat! Liulianshan's fierce roar rang out in the sky. Immediately, a violent force blasted out towards Nietion. Nietion was seriously injured, and Liulianshan was a holy disciple at the 9th level of the heavenly rhythm realm. If this force fell, Nietion would definitely die. Stop! Right at that moment, a clear voice rang out, following which a beam of green light descended from the sky and enveloped Nietion like a shield. Bam! In the next instant, the violent force descended, but it was blocked by the green shield and shattered with a loud bang. At the same time, Nietion felt the giant wolf's power rapidly weaken, and in the blink of an eye, it returned to its human form. He frowned and hesitated for a moment, but still reached out to catch the Sun Lang City Lord. Then, Nietion suddenly turned around, and his eyes released a cold, murderous intent as he stared coldly at Liulianshan. Brat, don't hurt the City Lord. Liulianshan's eyes trembled, and he shouted, thinking that Nietion was going to kill the Sun Lang City Lord. I'm not as despicable as you, Niet Tianling said coldly, and through the Sun Lang City Lord to the green-robed woman. His eyes were extremely cold as he locked onto Liulianshan. In order to get Nietion to help, Liulianshan had promised Nietion that as long as he saved the Sun Lang City Lord, he would write off everything that happened before. But just now, he took advantage of the fact that Nietion was entangled by the giant wolf to kill Nietion. Such behavior was despicable and shameless. You killed the Sun Lang City Lord, and you almost killed the Sun Lang City Lord. Shall I not kill you? Liulianshan growled coldly and fearlessly. It's true that I killed the Sun Lang City Lord, but the Sun Lang City Guard wanted to kill me first. Should I just stand still and let him kill me? Nie Tian responded coldly. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he said, "As for the master of Sun Lang City, it was you who wanted to kill me. I just fought back. If I was wrong, I will be," Chun said, and off. "Then what right do you have to kill me?" Every word was as firm as steel. Nie Tian could have turned a blind eye to what had just happened and walked away. He risked his life to save the Sun Lang City lord out of kindness. Not only did Lu Lianshan not thank him, but he also wanted to kill him. How could he not be angry? "You?" Lu Lianshan's face froze, and he was speechless. "Uncle Shan, stand down," the lady in green said in a low voice. Lu Lianshan did not give up. He looked at Nie Tian with murderous eyes and growled, "Miss, this kid almost killed the Sun Lang City Lord. Let me kill him." "Stand down." The lady in green's face changed, and she suddenly raised her voice. She was obviously angry. Lu Lianshan frowned, and his eyes were full of unwillingness. But he could sense the lady in green's anger, so he still retreated. "You saved my father. No matter what you did before, it is all written off." At that moment, the green guard woman turned to Nie Tian and said with a plain tone, "What happened just now was Uncle Shan's fault. I apologize on his behalf. There are still reasonable people in the Forest Wolf City." Nie Tian smiled faintly and nodded slightly. "Did you hear what I said just now? No one is allowed to take revenge on him." The lady in green nodded and looked at the Sun Lang guards around her. Yes, the Sun Lang guard were stunned for a long time, but they finally nodded. "Thank you." Nie Tian's face softened, and he smiled at the lady in green. "You are seriously injured. Follow me back to the Sun Lang City Lord's mansion." The lady in green looked at Nie Tian and said. She was afraid that he would be worried, so she added, "Don't worry. With me here, no one will dare to do anything to you." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "I'll do as you say." He had just arrived at the Sun Lang City, so there were many things that he did not know. Although the lady in green looked cold, she was actually easy to get along with, so he could ask her about some things. Next, the lady in green asked Lu Lianshan to deal with the scene, and then she brought Nie Tian back to the Sun Lang City Lord's mansion. After arriving at the Sun Lang City Lord's mansion, the lady in green asked Nie Tian to wait for her in the hall, and then she went to deal with the Sun Lang City Lord's mansion. Nie Tian waited in the main hall of the City Lord's mansion for about half an hour before the green-robed woman appeared. In the hall, Nie Tian looked at the lady in green and finally had a chance to observe her. The lady in green had exquisite features, and there was a heroic spirit between her brows. She was not inferior to men. Moreover, she was very calm, and she gave off a very steady feeling. "Are you all right?" At this moment, the lady in green spoke, but her eyes were surging with unconcealable surprise. She was very surprised that Nie Tian's martial body recovery ability was so terrifying. Previously, Nie Tian was seriously injured, but only half an hour had passed, and Nie Tian's breath had stabilized, as if he had almost recovered. Such a terrifying recovery ability was really shocking. "I'm fine," Nie Tian smiled and said, "My name is Nie Tian. May I know your name?" "Wenren Xiang." Wenren Xiang nodded slightly and said her name, and then said, "Young Master Nie, I'm sorry about what happened before. Uncle Shan was too protective of my father, so he killed you. Please don't take it to heart." "Miss Wenren, you're too kind." Nie Tian smiled faintly and asked, "How is your father? Is he okay?" "Father is a little weak, and he needs to rest for a while." Wenren Xiang nodded with a smile, and then no longer stood on ceremony. She asked, "Young Master Nie, is this your first time in the Sun Lang City?" "Yes." Nie Tian nodded, and without waiting for Wenren Xiang to ask further, he directly said, "Actually, I came to the Night Wolf Mountain to look for someone, but I passed by the Sun Lang City." "Looking for someone?" Wenren Xiang was taken aback, and the corners of her lips twitched slightly. This was the first time she heard of someone coming to the Night Wolf Mountain to look for someone. "Yes, I'm looking for someone." Nie Tian looked at Wenren Xiang, nodded again, and said, "To be honest, I'm a martial artist from a territory. I have a friend who was captured by someone with a heart-devouring blackstone when he was in the territory. I heard that you can find a heart-devouring blackstone in the Night Wolf Mountain. Is that right? Then, Nietian stared at Wenren Xiang, wanting to see her reaction. Heart-devouring blackstone. Hearing these 4 words, Wenren Xiang's eyes trembled, and her expression changed slightly. Miss Wenren, you know about the heart-devouring blackstone? Seeing Wenren Xiang's reaction, Nietian's eyes trembled, and he asked in surprise. Chapter 34:97. He has no right. The heart-devouring blackstone. Nietian looked at the blackstone in Wenren Xiang's hand and was shocked. He didn't expect Wenren Xiang to take out a piece of the heart-devouring blackstone. Why would Wenren Xiang have the heart-devouring blackstone? Could it be that Wenren Xiang belongs to the force behind the heart-devouring blackstone? Nietian's eyes darkened as he thought of this. His expression changed as he looked at Wenren Xiang. The heart-devouring blackstone is indeed from the Night Wolf Mountain. However, Wenren Xiang's face was calm, without a hint of nervousness. Instead, she smiled and said, "If the person you're looking for is really captured by the force behind the heart-devouring blackstone, then I can only offer you my condolences." Condolences? Nietian was startled. His expression darkened as he asked, "What do you mean? Could it be that the Emperor of the Underworld is dead?" The force behind the heart-devouring blackstone is at the Night Wolf Mountain. However, those who are captured by this force must die. The corner of Wenren Xiang's lips twitched as she said in a deep voice. Nietian's eyes darkened as he was dumbfounded. It seemed that Wenren Xiang knew the force behind the heart-devouring blackstone very well. He even suspected that Wenren Xiang belonged to that force. Eyebrows furrowed, Nietian looked at Wenren Xiang and asked, "Miss Wenren, where did you get the heart-devouring blackstone?" "Nietian, you want to ask if I belong to that force, right?" Wenren Xiang smiled and asked in return. "Yes." Nietian nodded and didn't hide anything. Since Wenren Xiang had revealed it, there was no need for him to hide anything. "I don't belong to that force, but I know where it is, and I can bring you there." Wenren Xiang's eyes flickered as she looked straight at Nietian. Nietian's eyes flickered with excitement. "Really?" "Yes." Wenren Xiang nodded, but her expression changed at this moment. She said, "But if you want me to help you, you must do something for me first." "Say it." Hearing Wenren Xiang's words, Nietian wasn't angry. Instead, he was very happy. He didn't like to owe others, so he felt more at ease when Wenren Xiang made a deal with him. "Come with me to a duel," Wenren Xiang said word by word, looking at Nietian with a pair of downcast eyes. "Sure." Nietian's eyes narrowed, and he agreed without any hesitation. "Aren't you going to ask me what battle I want you to go to?" Wenren Xiang was stunned for a moment and looked at Nietian with some doubt. Nietian's straightforwardness was beyond her expectations. "No matter what battle it is, I will definitely help you win." Nietian smiled faintly, his eyes surging with extreme confidence. "Very good." Wenren Xiang looked at Nietian and nodded. Nietian's confidence made her feel inexplicably at ease. "Brat, you sure talk big." However, at this moment, outside the hall, a sharp and mocking voice sounded. Then, a figure in green stepped into the hall. Behind him, there were 3 gray-robed warriors. Nietian looked at the figure in green walking towards him. He couldn't help but frown, and his expression was a little ugly. The person who came was a handsome young man. He was tall and straight, and he had an imposing appearance. His aura was released, and he showed off his abilities, giving people a very sharp feeling. However, at this moment, the way he looked at Nietian was very unfriendly, and even had a strong hostility and contempt. "Brother." Wenren Xiang looked at the person who came, and she frowned slightly. Then, she introduced him to Nietian. "Nietian, this is my father's son, my brother, Helian Chengfeng." Nietian glanced at Helian Chengfeng, nodded slightly, and didn't say anything. "Sister Xiang, who is this kid? Are we going to bring him to the battle in Songlang City?" Helian Chengfeng glanced at Nietian with cold eyes and asked with a cold smile. "Why not?" Wenren Xiang replied coldly, as if she was very cold to Helian Chengfeng. Sister Xiang, did you see clearly? This kid is only at the first level of heavenly charm. If we bring him to the battle, won't we be laughed at by the people of Songlang City? Helian Chengfeng's eyes darkened slightly, and he said coldly, his cultivation is not high, but his battle strength is very strong. Wenren Xiang replied coldly, battle strength is very strong? Helian Chengfeng sneered, and his eyes sized up Nietian and said, a mere first-level heavenly charm trash. How strong can he be? Even if his talent is monstrous, he can at most compete with second- or third-level heavenly charm martial artists. And the martial artists of Songlang City are stronger than our Forest Wolf City. I'm afraid that the weakest among them is close to the 9th level of heavenly charm. Are you planning to let a first-level heavenly charm martial artist fight against a 9th level heavenly charm martial artist? I've seen Yet Tian's battle strength with my own eyes. I believe that even if he faces a 9th level heavenly charm martial artist, he definitely won't be weak. Wenren Xiang frowned and said coldly, "Umph." Helian Chengfeng looked at Wenren Xiang and couldn't help but sneer and said, Sister Xiang, do you think that his battle strength is stronger than mine? Helian Chengfeng was a 9th level heavenly charm martial artist. He absolutely didn't believe that Nietian, a first-level heavenly charm holy disciple, could fight against him, a 9th level heavenly charm holy disciple. Helian Chengfeng, what do you want? Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled, and she was obviously a little impatient. She asked coldly, Sister Xiang, why are you angry? Helian Chengfeng laughed and said, I just feel that this kid doesn't have the qualifications to participate in Songlang City's arranged battle. I brought 3 friends with me, and they're all at the 7th level of heavenly charm. You can choose one of them to go with us to the arranged battle. Them. Wenren Xiang frowned, and her gaze swept across the 3 gray-robed martial artists behind Helian Chengfeng, and her eyes were a little cold. Helian Chengfeng wasn't in the city before, because he went to find these 3 fellows. Do you think that they are more qualified than me to go to the arranged battle? At this time, Niet Tan, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. His gaze swept across Helian Chengfeng and the others, and he asked indifferently, Isn't the answer obvious? Helian Chengfeng laughed and said, You're just a first-level heavenly charm trash. How can you compare to a 7th-level heavenly charm martial artist? Then let's give it a try. Nietian smiled faintly and said directly, Let me fight with them. If I lose, I'll be at your disposal. When Wenren Xiang heard Nietian's words, her beautiful eyes couldn't help but tremble, and she cried out in shock, Nietian. She knew that Nietian's strength was terrifying, but the latter had just gone through a big battle, and he was injured. Moreover, his strength hadn't fully recovered. How could he compete with a 7th-level heavenly charm martial artist? In her opinion, Niet Tian didn't even care about his life in order to prove himself. Believe me, Niet Tian, however, had a calm expression. He looked at Wenren Xiang indifferently and nodded with a smile. Wenren Xiang felt the strong confidence in Niet Tian's eyes, and she was stunned for a moment. She couldn't speak for a moment. Kid, who do you want to challenge first? Helian Chengfeng was very pleased at this time, and he looked at Nietian provocatively. Chapter 3498. Truly ruthless. Let the 3 of them come at me together. Nietian's voice wasn't loud, but when it landed in the ears of everyone present, it was like a bolt from the blue. The lobby immediately fell into a dead silence. Kid, what did you just say? Helian Chengfeng only reacted after a long time. His eyes emitted a sinister light as he looked at Nie Tianling and asked with a smile, I don't want trouble. Let the 3 of you come at me together. Nie Tian smiled faintly and glanced at the 3 gray-robed cultivators. At this time, the 3 gray-robed cultivators reacted. Their eyes trembled and their expressions changed. Kid, you're courting death. A mere first-level heavenly aura trash. I don't know where you get the courage to challenge the 3 of us. Just a clown trying to please the crowd. Brothers, don't interfere. Let me kill him alone. The 3 gray-robed cultivators looked at Nietian coldly and arrogantly. However, they still had the capital to be arrogant. After all, they were 7th-level heavenly aura cultivators. Nietian looked at the three of them, and his lips curled into a cold smile. At this time, the three of them were chattering away. In a while, they would know that the real clowns trying to please the crowd were them. Kid, I alone am enough to kill you. At this time, a gray-robed cultivator stood out and looked at Nietian with a low and cold expression. Are you sure? Nietian laughed, a playful look on his face. Insolence! The gray-robed cultivator roared and immediately stepped out of the lobby. Then he leaped up into the sky and shouted, Kid, come and die. The corner of Nietian's mouth twitched. He walked out of the lobby step by step and rushed up into the sky. Wenren Xiang, Helian Chengfeng, and the others also walked out of the lobby and looked at the two people in the sky. Stinking brat, you're dead for sure. Helian Chengfeng's gaze locked onto Nietian from afar. He smiled coldly and thought to himself, Nietian, can you really do it? Wenren Xiang couldn't hide the worry on her face. She was very worried about Nietian. Although Nietian was very confident, his previous injuries were too serious. In less than an hour, how much could he recover? Reckless brat, I'll kill you with one palm. At this moment, the gray-robed cultivator in the sky let out a low roar. After that, he made his move. His aura was as wild as a flood, bursting forth. A vast energy surged through the air, as if it wanted to destroy everything. Die. In the next moment, the corner of his mouth curled up into the word kill. After that, he slapped out with his palm. Instantly, the space around him trembled as a terrifying palm silhouette appeared, carrying with it a terrifying destructive force as it rumbled towards Nietian. Nietian's eyes narrowed as the corner of his lips twitched. After that, his aura erupted like a volcano. A surge of sword intent soared into the sky, as if it wanted to tear the heavens and earth apart. Bang! In the next moment, the two terrifying forces collided head-on. Immediately, the space around them trembled. Following that, the difference in strength was obvious. The palm silhouette swayed in the air for a moment before it directly crumbled. Bang! After that, with a muffled sound, a gray-robed cultivator was sent flying. Like a falling meteorite, he slammed heavily into the ground. At the moment of life and death, a figure soared into the sky and caught the gray-robed cultivator. However, the huge impact caused him to fall directly. The bluestone floor under his feet immediately crumbled. Damn it! The person who saved the gray-robed cultivator at the critical moment was one of his companions. The latter steadied his body and stared at Nietian like a venomous wolf. He didn't expect Nietian's strength to be so terrifying. One slash, just one slash, had directly injured the gray-robed cultivator. If the other gray-robed cultivator hadn't acted in time, the gray-robed cultivator would have directly fallen to the ground and died on the spot. How is this possible? The other gray-robed cultivator looked at Nietian with a face full of shock. A first-level heavenly rhythm cultivator heavily injured a 7th-level heavenly rhythm cultivator with one slash. Was this really not an illusion? Helian Chengfeng was stunned for a few seconds before he reacted. He looked at Nietian with a cold and murderous gaze, as if he wanted to eat someone up. Was Nietian's battle strength really as Wenren Xiang said? Could he really fight against a 9th-level heavenly rhythm cultivator? At this moment, Wenren Xiang was also stunned for a long time. Then, a knowing smile appeared on her pretty face. She didn't expect Nietian to be able to explode with such terrifying power, even though he was seriously injured. Nietian was really too terrifying. It seemed that her previous worries about Nietian were really unnecessary. And you two, come at me together. At this moment, Nietian, who was high up in the sky, looked at the other two gray-robed cultivators and said coldly, You're courting death. One of the gray-robed cultivators was obviously hot-tempered. He growled and yelled, Let's attack together and kill this stinking brat. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure suddenly moved and rushed over. While he was still in midair, his aura skyrocketed to the extreme. At this moment, A mysterious aura surged around his body and turned into a terrifying power that was released into the void. Heavenly Rhythm Force. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly as he exclaimed in his heart. Although this gray-robed cultivator was impulsive, he was not stupid. He already knew how powerful Nietion was, so he went all out from the start and directly used 7 strands of Heavenly Rhythm Force. 7 strands of Heavenly Rhythm Force was the gray-robed cultivator's limit. In order to kill Nietion, he really did everything he could. Wen Rinxiang frowned, and her expression changed when she saw this. She did not expect the gray-robed cultivator to use Heavenly Rhythm Force. When a Heavenly Rhythm cultivator used Heavenly Rhythm Force, it was actually a desperate fight. This was because once Heavenly Rhythm Force was used, there would be a period of weakness. That gray-robed cultivator used 7 strands of Heavenly Rhythm Force to kill Nietion. How ruthless! Boom! In the next instant, the gray-robed cultivator made his move. With a slap, a terrifying palm shadow appeared and caused the void to tremble. Boom! At the same time, the other gray-robed cultivator also made his move. He also used Heavenly Rhythm Force, and a terrifying flaming fist shadow appeared, burning everything in its path as it bombarded Nietion. Oh no! Wen Rinxiang was shocked by the scene in the sky. She knew that things were not looking good for her. She knew that Nietion was powerful, but she did not believe that Nietion could fight against 2 7th-layer Heavenly Rhythm cultivators with Heavenly Rhythm Force while he was injured. Brat, you're dead. Helian Chungfeng, who was standing to the side, had a murderous look on his face. His eyes were burning with passion, as if he could already see the scene of Nietion being killed. He absolutely did not believe that Nietion had the strength to fight against the situation before him. At this moment, Nietion, who was high up in the sky, did not panic. Instead, the corners of his mouth twitched as the starry sky slash appeared in his other hand. Chapter 3499. Chapter 3494. Chapter 3494. Never break an appointment. When Wen Rinxiang and Helian Chungfeng saw the 2 swords in Nietion's hands, they couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. What was Nietion trying to do? Using 2 swords at the same time? It wasn't that there weren't any dual swordsmen, but they were all famous sword masters. Could it be that Nietion, who hadn't even stepped into the realm of sword rhythm, was going to use dual swords? From Wen Rinxiang and Helian Chungfeng's point of view, his actions were no different from seeking his own death. They had never seen a swordsman who had not even reached the realm of sword rhyme, being able to wield 2 swords at the same time. Saint Heaven defying sword. Earth sword devours the moon. Sky sword reverses the sun. At this moment, the corner of Nietion's lips twitched. His low and murderous voice echoed through the air. Then the sword intent from his entire body gushed out. It was obvious that the sword intent was divided into 2 and gathered in his hands. In the next moment, a strange scene took place. Nietion wielded the 7-sutra demon sword and the star heaven slash at the same time. In the next moment, 2 sword projections with different auras appeared. Like 2 enormous dragons, they swooped down from the heavens. When Wen Rinxiang and Helian Chungfeng saw this scene, their eyes widened. They couldn't believe their eyes at all. What did they see? Not only did Nietion use 2 swords, both swords actually had different sword intent auras, and at the same time, they were also different sword techniques. It was extremely rare for a swordsman to be able to wield 2 swords at the same time. Nietion, on the other hand, wielded 2 swords with completely different auras, and even used different sword techniques. Such a scene was too shocking. Nietion's understanding and control of sword intent was too terrifying. It could be said that Nietion's application of sword intent was so precise that even many sword Dao grandmasters might not be able to achieve it. Just as Wen Rinxiang and Helian Chungfeng were shocked beyond words, an even more shocking scene occurred once again. Heaven and earth as one. Nietion let out a low roar. Then, the 2 sword shadows in the void actually combined into one in an instant, condensing into a gigantic sword shadow with an aura that was several times more violent than before. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying sword will rippled out from the void, as though the entire void was about to collapse in an instant. How could this be? One of the gray-robed cultivators, who was closer to Nietian, exclaimed in horror when he felt the killing and suppressive force surging over. He couldn't believe that Nietian could unleash such a terrifying power. Is Nietian really a first-stage heavenly charm martial artist? On the other side, the other gray-robed cultivator felt that something was wrong. His figure flashed as he retreated. Boom! In the next instant, the huge sword image descended. The palm image and the flaming fist image were instantly engulfed. Then, the gray-robed cultivator could not react at all and was swallowed up by the sword image. Not even his bones remained. Bang! As for the gray-robed cultivator who retreated in advance, the horrifying sword might struck him and sent him flying, leaving a bloody trail in the air. After a moment, the sword image in the air disappeared and everything returned to normal. However, the void was filled with a sharp sword aura and the smell of blood. The scene was silent for more than 10 seconds before there was finally movement. Bastard! How dare you kill my people? Hellion Chungfeng roared. His entire body was incomparably violent. His eyes were bloodshot, and a violent rage spread in the void, as though it wanted to burn everything. Hellion Chungfeng, what are you trying to do? Almost at the same time, Wenren Xiang's face suddenly darkened as she looked at Hellion Chungfeng cold. Kill him! Hellion Chungfeng roared. Then his figure moved. He stomped hard on the ground, stirring up a layer of dust. He was like a raging dragon, charging towards Nietian. However, in the next moment, Hellion Chungfeng's figure froze in the air. He could not move. Hellion Chungfeng suddenly turned around. His eyes were deep and murderous as he locked onto Wenren Xiang. He said coldly, "Let go." It turned out that he had been trapped by Wenren Xiang's 9-leaf duckweed. The 9-leaf duckweed looked very fragile, but it contained extremely terrifying power. Even though Hellion Chungfeng was at the 9th level of Heavenly Yun, he could not move at all. Hellion Chungfeng, don't force me. Wenren Xiang's eyes were cold and murderous. She spoke in a low voice, threatening tone. There was no way she would let Hellion Chungfeng attack Nietian. At this moment, Nietian had almost exhausted all of his strength after defeating 3 7th level Heavenly Charm martial artists. In addition, he was previously injured. Suddenly releasing such a huge sword will and using the Celestial Evolution Saint Soul and the Omniscient Saint Soul at the same time had caused his injuries to worsen. If Hellion Chungfeng attacked Nietian again, the latter would be in danger. For this person, you're going to attack your own brother? Hellion Chungfeng's eyes were incomparably cold. There was a murderous look on his face. You forced me to attack. Wenren Xiang responded cold. Then the 9-leaf duckweed tightened, making Hellion Chungfeng feel breathless. She was at the 8th level of Heavenly Yun, while Hellion Chungfeng was at the 9th level. But if the two really fought to the death, the outcome was unknown. At this time, Hellion Chungfeng was restrained by Wenren Xiang and had no strength to resist. As long as Wenren Xiang wanted to, she could kill Hellion Chungfeng in an instant. Hellion Chungfeng felt the murderous look in Wenren Xiang's eyes and frowned. His expression was very ugly. He knew that this was a moment of life and death. If he made the wrong choice, Wenren Xiang would really kill him. On the surface, he was the adopted son of the Sunlang City Lord and Wenren Xiang's brother. But in reality, he had another identity. Wenren Xiang did not say it on the surface, but she knew Hellion Chungfeng's true identity. It was only for the sake of the big picture that Wenren Xiang and Hellion Chungfeng did not fall out. If Hellion Chungfeng really wanted to kill Nietian, then Wenren Xiang would not hesitate and would definitely kill him. He killed the people I brought. Are we just going to let it go like this? After a moment, Hellion Chungfeng calmed down a lot and said with a gloomy face, it was clearly just exchanging pointers. Why did you have to kill me? Exchanging pointers? At this time, without waiting for Wenren Xiang to speak, Niet Tian laughed coldly and said, "Did the three of them really think this was just exchanging pointers? Are you blind and can't see anything? Among the three of them, which one of them didn't want to kill me directly? If my strength was a bit weaker, I'm afraid the one who died right now would be me." "You." Helian Chingfeng looked at Niet Tian, and his face suddenly darkened. For a moment, he was speechless. "Helian Chingfeng, if you have the courage, then attack me." Niet Tianling laughed coldly and said with a provocative face. Helian Chengfeng's expression was ugly to the extreme. He turned around and looked at Wenren Xiang. After hesitating for a long time, he finally said, "This matter ends here." Wenren Xiang's gaze darkened slightly. She nodded and carefully released Helian Chengfeng. After Helian Chengfeng broke free, he suddenly turned around and looked coldly at Niet Tian. He said, "Stinking brat, I hope you don't break the appointment with Songlang City. I want to see just how strong you are." Chapter 3500. "Chief Wolf, that's good," Helian Chingfeng replied coldly, after which he didn't say anything else. Instead, he glared at Wenren Xiang fiercely before leaving. Wenren Xiang looked at Helian Chingfeng's back. Her pretty face did not look good. After a long time, she sighed softly. "Miss Wenren, thank you for your help just now." Niet Tian looked at Wenren Xiang and bowed slightly to express his gratitude. "You're heavily injured. Go and rest first." Wenren Xiang looked at Niet Tian and said, "The arranged battle with Songlang City is in 7 days. In these 7 days, don't leave the city lord's residence. Have a good rest." Niet Tian nodded slightly and smiled faintly. He knew that Wenren Xiang was worried that Helian Chingfeng would harm him. As long as he stayed in the city lord's mansion, he would be safe. After that, Wenren Xiang arranged a small courtyard for Niet Tian to rest in. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. In a small courtyard of the city lord's mansion, several figures stood there. It was Niet Tian and the others. "Teacher, are you going to keep the appointment now?" Duanmulu looked at Niet Tian, clearly a little worried. "Don't worry, it's just a challenge. It's no big deal." Niet Tian smiled faintly, looking very relaxed. "Little blockhead, how can you not have confidence in your teacher?" Ning Ziyu laughed and teased him. During these 7 days, Ning Ziyu had become very familiar with Duanmulu and the others. They often joked with each other. Duanmulu nodded and didn't say anything. Vaguely, he had an ominous feeling. Niet Tian. At this moment, outside the small courtyard, a clear and familiar voice rang out. Immediately after, 2 silhouettes walked over. It was Wenren Xiang and her father, the city lord of the Forest Wolf City, Wenren Tuesday, City Lord Wenren, Lady Wenren. Niet Tian looked at the father and daughter of the Wenren family and smiled faintly. In the past few days, Wenren too often came to see him, and they had become familiar with each other. After Wenren too activated the Forest Wolf Curse Seal last time, he had almost recovered after 7 days of recuperation. As for Niet Tian, he had completely recovered a few days ago. His strength had also increased, but he had not broken through yet. After all, he had only come to the Saints' World recently. It would be rather difficult for him to break through. "Little brother Niet Tian, it's getting late. You should set off now. Qingfen is already waiting for you outside the city." Wenren too smiled faintly and looked at Niet Tian. After spending the past few days together, the misunderstanding between him and Niet Tian had been resolved. He didn't have any antipathy towards Niet Tian. Instead, he would occasionally reveal the intention to rope him in. Unfortunately, Niet Tian was stubborn and acted as if he couldn't tell. "Yes." Niet Tian nodded and said, "Then I'll have to trouble City Lord Wenren to take care of my disciples and the others." This time, Niet Tian still decided to let Duanmulu and the others stay after thinking about it. Moreover, in the past few days, Wenren too had opened a special cultivation place in the Forest Wolf City for Duanmulu and the others. Duanmulu and the others cultivated there, and their strength improved very quickly. In just a few days, Duanmulu already showed signs of breaking through to the half-saint realm. Niet Tian didn't want Duanmulu to waste his cultivation time. After thinking about it, he still let them stay here. To be honest, Niet Tian was a little worried about Wenren Tuesday. However, He was with Wunrin Xiang. Even if Wunrin too really had evil intentions, he should be concerned about Wunrin Xiang. Nie Tian believed that as long as he had Wunrin Xiang by his side, then Duanmu Lu and the others would definitely be safe. Subsequently, Nie Tian warned Duanmu Lu with a few words and left with Wunrin Tu and Wunrin Xiang. When the three people came outside the city, Nie Tian saw a figure in the distance. It was not unfamiliar. It was Hellion Chungfeng. This time, there were a total of 3 people from the Forest Wolf City going to the battle: Hellion Chungfeng, Wunrin Xiang, and Nie Tian. Nie Tian was very puzzled. Since it was a battle between 2 cities, why didn't Wunrin Tu, the city lord, go? Chungfeng, Xiang, Nie Tian, little friend, be careful on the way. This city lord will be in the city, waiting for your victorious return. Wunrin Tu's gaze swept over Nie Tian and the others. He laughed and said in a clear voice, "Don't worry, foster father. Chungfeng will definitely defeat those Tsang Lang city bastards for the Forest Wolf City." Hellion Chungfeng nodded with a smile and said with full confidence, "Good, then your father's painstaking efforts for you will not be in vain." Wunrin too nodded with a smile, but his gaze swept across Nie Tian's body strangely. He already completely forgot the battle with Nie Tian before, but he heard some of the process from Wunrin Xiang's mouth. If Nie Tian could really contend with him in the Forest Wolf Curse body state, then this battle, the Forest Wolf City, would definitely win. At this time, the one who truly made Wunrin Tu feel at ease was not Hellion Chungfeng, but Nie Tian. Following that, Nie Tian and the others did not stay any longer. They directly left and set off for Tsang Lang City. Along the way, Hellion Chungfeng did not say a word. He only looked at Nie Tian from time to time with a stern face. Half a day later, the 3 of them arrived outside a small city. The city gate was engraved with 4 big words: Tsang Lang City. At this time, high up in the sky outside Tsang Lang City, thousands of black-clothed martial artists stood in the void. Their imposing manner was majestic, like a dense dark cloud that wanted to tear apart heaven and earth. And below these martial artists stood a white-haired elder and 3 young martial artists. Junior Hellion Chungfeng, the adopted son of the Forest Wolf City Lord, kneels to Lord Wolf Commander. At this time, Hellion Chungfeng was the first to fly over. Then he stood 1,000 meters away and bowed to the white-haired elder. Following that, he actually knelt down. "So, it's someone from the Hellion family. No need to be overly courteous. Get up. I and your Hellion family's Hellion Tsangfeng are old friends." The white-haired wolf commander smiled faintly and waved his hand, indicating for Hellion Chungfeng to get up and speak. "Many thanks, Lord Wolf Commander." Hellion Tsangfeng smiled faintly, bowed, and said, "The name that Lord Wolf Commander mentioned is this junior's ancestor." Wolf Commander nodded and didn't say anything else. Then, he looked at Wunrin Xiang and Nie Tian. "Nie Tian, this is the notary for the battle between the 2 cities, Lord Wolf Commander." Wunrin Xiang's beautiful eyes flickered as she secretly transmitted a message to Nie Tian. "Junior Nie Tian greets Lord Wolf Commander." Nie Tian understood and smiled faintly, bowed slightly, and expressed his respect in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. "Junior Wunrin Xiang greets Lord Wolf Commander." At the same time, Wunrin Xiang also bowed slightly. Wunrin Xiang, Wunrin Tu's daughter, is indeed not simple. Wolf Commander nodded and said with a smile. Then he locked his gaze on Nie Tian and couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Then he twirled his thumb ring and sneered, "What? Has the Forest Wolf City become so weak that they actually sent a first-level heaven rhythm martial artist to the battle?" His words were frivolous and carried a strong sense of contempt. However, at this moment, Nie Tian didn't pay attention to Wolf Commander's words. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the black thumb ring on Wolf Commander's thumb. That black thumb ring was simple and unadorned. To put it bluntly, it was just a black ring. However, that thumb ring emitted an aura that Nie Tian was very familiar with, the aura of the heart-devouring Blackstone. Wolf Commander's thumb ring was actually made of the heart-devouring Blackstone. Chapter 3501. The First Battle, Heart-Devouring Blackstone. Nietion's eyes darkened and his expression changed. Wolf C's thumb ring was made from the heart-devouring Blackstone, and the dark aura on the thumb ring was even stronger than the heart-devouring Blackstone. Did this mean that Wolf C was from the faction behind the heart-devouring Blackstone? Nietion. At this moment, Wenren Xiang noticed Nietion's abnormality and transmitted a message. After the battle, I will explain everything to you. Nietion replied, and his expression gradually returned to normal. Brat, do you think that I, Wolf C, am wrong? Wolf C obviously noticed the change in Nietion's expression. He thought that his mocking words made Nietion unhappy and asked with a sneer. I dare not. Nietion forced a smile and replied. Looking at the attitude of Wenren Xiang and the others towards Wolf C, the latter's identity was not ordinary. Nietion did not want to expose anything because of a moment of impulse. I don't think you dare. Wolf C sneered. Then his gaze swept across the others and said in a loud voice, Today is the day of the ice and fire battle between your Sunlang City and Songlang City. The outcome of today's battle will determine the ownership of the ice and fire springs for the next 10,000 years. The ice and fire springs is located between the two cities. Whichever side wins this battle, the ice and fire springs will belong to that side. You guys don't have any objections, right? After saying that, Wolf C looked coldly at Nietion and the others, as well as the three young martialists on the other side. Wenren Xiang and the others nodded, indicating that they had no objections. Nietion's gaze froze. Only now did he know that this battle was for the ice and fire springs. It sounded like the ice and fire springs was a secret realm for martialists to cultivate, just like the ice and fire lake of Situbai, one of the three elders of Saint Soul Academy. Nietion, Songlang City won the previous battle, and now the ice and fire springs are under their control. This time we must not lose. At this time, Wenren Xiang looked at Nietion and said in a low voice, Nietion nodded and didn't say anything else. Everyone, you should know the rules of the battle, right? Following that, Wolf C chuckled but still explained, both sides will send out 3 people each, and the winner will continue to fight, while the loser will be eliminated. Whichever side loses if all 3 of their members are eliminated. When Nietion heard Lang Ci's words, his eyes narrowed and his lips curled into a faint smile. This method of competition was quite reasonable. He just didn't know who would be the first to fight. Forest Wolf City, you are the losers. Who want to be the first to fight? Step forward. Lang Ci looked at Wenren Xiang and the others and said coldly, Of course the weakest will go first. Before he finished speaking, Helian Qingfeng had already stepped forward. His eyes squinted at Nietion as he spoke in a strange tone. I will fight the first battle. At this time, Wenren Xiang stepped forward and said in a loud voice, Lady Wenren, let me fight the first battle. But immediately after, Nietion stepped forward and glanced coldly at Helian Qingfeng, then looked at Wenren Xiang and said indifferently. He didn't want to be the first to fight, but Helian Qingfeng didn't plan on fighting, and it wasn't appropriate for Wenren Xiang to fight first, so he could only reluctantly do it. All right, it's you. Without waiting for Wenren Xiang to speak, Wolf C sneered and pointed at Nietion. He sneered and said, This Wolf C wants to see if the Sunlang City Lord is crazy. He actually sent a first-level Heaven Charm martial artist to participate in the battle. All right, then please watch carefully, Lord Wolf C. Nietion glanced at Wolf C and smiled faintly. Then, his figure moved and he stepped into the void. How dare a mere first-level heavenly charm, trash, be so insolent? Just as he was about to finish his sentence, a low and violent voice rang out. Then, a martial artist from Songlang City stepped into the air and landed in the sky. He looked at Nietion with a pair of ferocious eyes, cold and filled with contempt. Nietion looked at the martialist in front of him, and the corner of his mouth twitched. This martialist was very strong. He was already at the 9th level of heavenly charm. After he released his aura, he wasn't any weaker than Helian Qingfeng. However, this kind of strength wasn't enough to make Nietion afraid. Brat, I only need one move to kill you. The martialist smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. I'll return the same words to you. Nie Tianling laughed and secretly accumulated sword intent. You're courting death. The martial artist roared, and the aura around him surged to the extreme in an instant. It turned into a surging force in the void, suppressing the heavens and earth, ferocious and violent. Go to hell. In the next moment, he roared and his figure moved. He struck out with his palm, causing the void to tremble. Suddenly, a thunderous palm appeared and a terrifying thunderbolt was released, forming a lightning chain that was tens of thousands of meters long. From afar, the martialist looked like he was in a sea of lightning. What a strong aura! Wolsey narrowed his eyes and smiled coldly. A 9th-level Heavenly Charm Thunder Martialist using such power to kill a 1st-level Heavenly Charm Martialist is a bit of a waste. In his opinion, killing Nie Tian didn't require such a powerful force. Helian Chengfeng's eyes trembled. His face didn't show worry, but passion. He wasn't worried about Nie Tian. He couldn't wait for Nie Tian to die on the spot. Wen Rinxiang frowned slightly, but she wasn't too nervous. She believed in Nie Tian. So powerful. The thousands of gray wolf martial artists in the distance exclaimed in unison, and they were extremely shocked. Boom! In the next moment, the raging lightning power was unleashed and morphed into a huge lightning palm that pressed down towards Nie Tian. The space within a radius of tens of thousands of meters was filled with terrifying lightning power. Dazzling lightning bolts rolled out like a storm. Thunderbolt energy? Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. There was no fear in his eyes, only a strong, fighting spirit. He sneered. I know it too. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, his body trembled and a violent dragon aura was released. The dragon aura was filled with terrifying thunderbolt energy. Boom! In the next instant, a berserk dragon appeared within the sea of lightning. Its body was over 10,000 meters long, and it was covered in a layer of lightning energy. At the same time, there was a mysterious aura that caused the lightning energy within its body to explode out with an even more berserk aura. This time, not only did Nie Tian use the dragon aura, but he also integrated the power of the innumerable saint spirit into it. This was the first time he integrated the dragon aura with the saint spirit, which meant that he had a deeper understanding of the various powers in his body. Chapter 3502. Extreme Sharpness. How is this possible? The shocking scene in the sky caused everyone's eyes to tremble. They were shocked to the extreme, and their expressions instantly stiffened. Who would have thought that a first-stage Heavenly Charm martial artist could unleash such terrifying power in an instant? The moment the lightning dragon soared into the sky, it was as if it could swallow the sky. Rumble. Crack, crack, crack. At this moment, the huge dragon charged into the sea of lightning. It actually forcefully broke through the bolts of lightning and charged towards the blazing white lightning palm. Boom! Boom! The crowd was shocked by the scene in front of them. Many people's mouths were wide open, but no sound came out. The sky was filled with the power of lightning. The crowd could only see the violent lightning. They could not see Nie Tian and the Songlang martial artist at all. Bang! After some time, a muffled sound could be heard. Then, a blood-colored figure flew out like a kite with a broken string and fell to the ground. It's someone from our Songlang city. The crowd's eyes trembled as they looked at the blood-colored figure. Finally, someone recognized it and shouted loudly. The blood-colored figure was the Songlang city martial artist. Without a doubt, Nie Tian won this battle. The crowd reacted and abruptly raised their heads. They saw a silver-haired silhouette standing in the air. His aura wasn't strong, but he gave off an extremely sharp feeling. It was as though he was standing there and could tear the heavens and earth apart with just a wave of his hand or a kick. This figure was, of course, Nie Tian. He and the Songlang martial artist fought to the death the moment they fought. And the result of the competition was that he won. However, he also suffered some minor injuries. There were some wounds on his body that had just healed. One had to admit that the Songlang martial artist was very strong. If this person had been more ruthless and used the 9 heavenly auras right from the start, it would have been hard to predict the outcome of this battle. The reason why Tian could win was because he went all out. Furthermore, his power of thunder had a considerable suppressive effect on that martial artist. In the end, that cultivator was too careless. Actually, this wasn't his fault. No normal person would have thought that a first-stage heaven rhythm martial artist would be able to unleash such terrifying power in an instant. Tian. At this time, Helian Chengfeng looked at Tian from afar. His eyes were extremely sinister, as if he wanted to kill Tian. Tian's strength had far exceeded his expectations. Just as Wenren Xiang said, Tian's battle prowess was no weaker than a 9th-level heavenly charm martial artist. Even he, Helian Chengfeng, would find it extremely difficult to defeat that Ash Wolf warrior. Tian, however, had only used one move. At this time, Tian smiled faintly, looked at Wolf C calmly and provocatively, and asked indifferently, "Lord Wolf C, may I ask if you saw clearly just now?" Wolf C frowned. His old face was incomparably gloomy and ugly to the extreme. He had to admit that the power that Tian displayed just now had completely stunned him. He had never seen a martial artist's talent reach such a level. At this time, he knew that he had misjudged Tian. "You're calling Tian, right?" Wolf C frowned for a good while before opening his mouth and saying, "You won and can continue fighting. Do you want to continue fighting the next person, or do you want to take a break?" The rules of the Battle of Ice and Fire were that the winner would continue fighting and the loser would be directly eliminated. After Tian won, he had 2 choices. One was to continue fighting and fight the other 2 people from Ash Wolf City. If he could beat the remaining 2, then Helian Chengfeng and Wenren Xiang wouldn't need to make a move, and Sun Lang City would win. He also had another choice, which was to temporarily step down and let Helian Chengfeng and Wenren Xiang fight. "I'll take a break first." After thinking for a while, Tian smiled faintly. He could tell that the strength of the other 2 people from Ash Wolf City was definitely not beneath that Thunderbolt martial artist. If he continued fighting, there would be danger. He wasn't a brute, and now wasn't the time to play the hero. Hence, it was better to take a break. Moreover, if he kept winning, then wouldn't there be no need for Helian Chengfeng and Wenren Xiang to exist? Wolf C looked at Tian and couldn't help but be stunned. He originally thought that with Tian's youthful vigor, he would choose to continue fighting. From the look of it, Tian was much more shrewd than he had thought. "Helian Chengfeng, Wenren Xiang, which one of you wants to fight next?" Then, Wolf C looked at Wenren Xiang and Helian Chengfeng and asked coldly, "Younger sister Xiang, let me go." Helian Chengfeng didn't wait for Wenren Xiang to speak and directly said this. Then, he took a step forward and stepped into the void. Wenren Xiang frowned, but didn't say anything. "Tian, are you all right?" At this time, Tian came to Wenren Xiang's side, and the latter asked with concern, "I'm fine." Tian smiled faintly, his face calm. He only suffered some light injuries. After a little recovery, he would be completely fine. Boom! And just at this moment, a figure descended from the sky like a gigantic mountain, causing the entire void to tremble. Tian looked at that person and couldn't help but narrow his eyes. That guy looked incomparably skinny, like a hemp stick, but standing in the void, he had a strange and incomparably sharp aura. That person was also at the 9th level of heavenly charm, but his aura was much stronger than that of the previous Thunder Warrior. And at this time, a mysterious aura circulated around the skinny warrior's body. It was sharp to the extreme, as if it could tear everything apart. "Your aura." At this time, Helian Chengfeng looked at that skinny warrior and seemed to have sensed something. He became very flustered and couldn't help but exclaim, "I'm going to attack." That skinny warrior didn't wait for Helian Chengfeng to finish speaking. His figure instantly moved. On his palm, a scarlet light appeared and flew out like a stream of light. Its speed was extremely fast as it flew towards Helian Chengfeng. "Ming family." Helian Chengfeng's eyes trembled. He shouted in horror, and his figure instantly retreated. But unfortunately, it was already too late. PFFF. that scarlet light arrived in an instant, directly piercing through Helian Chungfeng's shoulder. Swish, swish, swish. Helian Chungfeng's body trembled in horror. And at this time, an earth-shattering scarlet light appeared in the void. Suddenly, a huge killing intent spread across the entire world. Chapter 35:03. A desperate gamble, raging flame crystal. This is the power of the Ming family's bloodline. While Nie Tian was still in a daze, Wenren Xiang, who was standing next to him, let out a startled cry, and her pretty face stiffened. She did not expect that the lean martial artist was actually someone from the Ming family. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the raging flame crystal in the air suddenly moved. An ear-piercing sound came from the air, as though the space could not bear it and was about to collapse. I admit defeat. Helian Chungfeng's eyes trembled. Feeling the sharp aura rushing towards him, he actually shouted and admitted defeat on the spot. Oomph. The lean martial artist sneered and waved his long sleeves. The raging flame crystal in the air directly disappeared. Who? Helian Chungfeng felt the sharp aura in the air stop abruptly. His pupils constricted, and after coming to his senses, he let out a long breath of turbid air. His forehead and body were already drenched in cold sweat. It was really a moment of life and death just now. If the lean martial artist did not stop, he would definitely die on the spot. Oomph. At this moment, the lean martial artist sneered. His eyes were filled with extreme contempt. He looked at Helian Chungfeng and said, "You should be glad that your surname is Helian. Otherwise, you would not even have a corpse left." The lean martial artist won the battle without any bloodshed. The reason why he did not kill Helian Chungfeng was not because he was soft-hearted, but because he was afraid of the Helian family behind Helian Chungfeng. Helian Chungfeng's face was ugly. He looked at the lean martial artist with fear, not daring to speak. Mingtai, Mingtai, Mingtai. At this moment, the martial artists of Songlang City reacted and shouted the name of the lean martial artist. So this guy is Mingtai. Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled. She was surprised. She had never seen Mingtai before, but she had heard of this name. Mingtai was one of the 3 geniuses of the Ming family's younger generation. No wonder the raging flame, crystal bloodline in his body was so terrifying. Helian Chungfeng was a martial artist of the same level as Mingtai. However, in front of the latter, he had no chance to resist. Nie Tian looked at Mingtai and his lips twitched. He thought to himself, the most terrifying thing about this person's bloodline isn't his strength, but his speed. It was impossible to dodge those extremely sharp, raging flame crystals. I'm afraid that even a warrior at the first tier of the Heavenly Mandate realm might not be able to block the fiery crystal. This wolf commander announces that this match, Mingtai wins. At this time, Wolf C's voice rang out. He looked at Mingtai and asked loudly, "Mingtai, do you want to continue fighting or rest for a while? There's no need to trouble yourself. I alone am enough. Let's continue." Mingtai's gaze swept over Wenren Xiang and Nie Tian as he sneered. It was obvious that he didn't take Nie Tian seriously at all. Good. Wolf C laughed, looked at Nie Tian and Wenren Xiang, and asked, "You two, who will fight?" Me. Almost at the same time, Nie Tian and Wenren Xiang stood up, both wanting to fight. "Lady Wenren, let me do it." Nie Tian looked at Wenren Xiang and said lightly, "Let me do it." Wenren Xiang was extremely insistent, after which she stepped out and flew up into the air. Nie Tian frowned, and he couldn't help but worry. Mingtai's strength was very terrifying. He showed mercy to Helian Chungfeng, but it didn't mean that he would show mercy to Wenren Xiang. For Nie Tian, it didn't matter whether Wenren Xiang won or not. The most important thing was that she could survive. People of the Wenren family. Mingtai looked at Wenren Xiang with a pair of cold eyes, as if he wanted to eat someone. "Make your move." Wenren Xiang didn't waste time and said directly, "Since you are so eager to die, I will fulfill your wish." Mingtai smiled coldly. His palm moved, and a crimson raging flame crystal appeared in his hand. Suddenly, the void was filled with a sharp aura. Swoosh! In the next moment, Ming Tai made his move. The raging flame crystal was like a crimson flame, piercing through the air and rushing towards Wenren Xiang at an extremely fast speed. Wenren Xiang's slender body flickered, and the 9-leaf duckweed appeared, which blossomed in midair. 1 leaf became 2, and then 2 became 4, until it became an inexhaustible amount of duckweed, which formed a green shield around her. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw this. Wenren Xiang knew that she couldn't dodge the raging flame crystal, so she chose to defend and take the attack head-on. Bang! At this moment, the raging flame crystal fell and bombarded the duckweed shield. After a muffled sound, a big hole appeared on the shield, and the raging flame crystal shattered. Wenren Xiang used the duckweed shield to block the attack of the raging flame crystal. A little interesting. Ming Tai was surprised when he saw this, but then he sneered and said, the 9-leaf duckweed's defense and vitality are really strong. But unfortunately, no matter how strong the duckweed is, it will turn to ashes in front of the raging flame. Hua! 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 As soon as he finished speaking, 3 larger raging flame crystals appeared in his hand, and the sharp aura they emitted was even stronger. The 3 raging flame crystals seemed to contain the power to tear the sky apart, extremely sharp. Is that so? Wenren Xiang sneered, and the gap on the duckweed shield instantly recovered. The 9-leaf duckweed was a special sacred weapon that contained an extremely powerful force. It could be used together with the power of a cultivator's bloodline. The stronger the bloodline of a cultivator, the stronger the power of the 9-leaf duckweed. Kill! In the next instant, Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes turned cold as she shouted in a low voice and actually took the offensive. Her figure was like a green ray of light that blasted towards Ming Tai. You're courting death. Ming Tai frowned, and then he laughed gloomily. He didn't hold back any longer, and an expanse of crimson red blaze crystals appeared all over his body. There were a few thousand of them, and they were like numerous flaming blades. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Ming Tai's eyes trembled, and he was extremely vicious. Thousands of raging flame crystals shot out, covering the sky and pressing down on Wenren Xiang. At the same time, the duckweed shield around Wenren Xiang's body trembled, and then turned into a giant duckweed sword that slashed down, pressing down on the void. It turned out that Wenren Xiang seemed to be defending on the surface, but she was actually taking the initiative to attack. Of course, she understood that passively defending could at most prevent her from being defeated, but it could not prevent him from dying. If she wanted to win, she could only fight with her life on the line. What a fierce woman! Wolf C's eyes trembled when he saw this scene, and he exclaimed. Hellion Qingfeng's expression was extremely gloomy and ugly. As a woman, Wenren Xiang could still fight with her life on the line, but he could only admit defeat. He was worse than a woman. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, the giant green sword slammed into the raging flame crystals that filled the sky. Violent explosions sounded in the void, as if the entire world was about to collapse. One by one, the raging flame crystals shattered, and the giant green sword continued to shorten. Bang! After a while, the giant green sword in Wenren Xiang's hand finally could not withstand it anymore and shattered. Chapter 3504. The extreme demon strikes again. Oh no! Wenren Xiang felt the incoming killing intent. Her beautiful eyes trembled, and her heart was filled with horror. She had used all her strength in that attack just now and had no intention of retreating. However, Ming Tai's strength had far exceeded her expectations. Even if she used the 9-leaf duckweed to its limit, she was still no match for Ming Tai. Die! Ming Tai smiled coldly, his face cold. If the flaming crystals fell, Wenren Xiang would definitely die. Wenren Xiang, you have already lost. Leave the next battle to me. At this moment, a low voice sounded in the void. Then, a figure appeared in the void and blocked in front of Wenren Xiang. PFFF, PFFF, PFFF. In the next instant, several flaming crystals fell and directly pierced through the figure's body. The figure was immediately covered in blood. Wenren Xiang suddenly froze. Seeing Nie Tian standing in front of her, she could not help but exclaim, "Nie Tian." She never imagined that at the moment of life and death, Nie Tian would use his flesh and blood to block the fatal flaming crystals for her. "I'm fine." Nie Tian steadied his body and did not turn around. He only waved his hand, indicating that Wenren Xiang should not come closer. Wenren Xiang's body froze. For a moment, she did not know what to say. The sudden scene stunned Helian Chung Feng for a moment. Then he frowned and thought coldly in his heart, "Kid with the surname Nye, do you like to play the hero so much? I want to see how you will fight the next battle." At the same time, Ming Tai frowned, and his expression changed slightly. He looked at Nie Tian with an incomparably gloomy expression and a trace of surprise. He did not expect Nie Tian's action. Moreover, Nie Tian was still able to stand steadily after being pierced by several flaming crystals. This shocked him even more. Could it be that Nie Tian's martial body was even more terrifying than that of a heavenly mandate realm expert? Nie Tian. And at this time, Wolf C's deep roar came from the other side. His rage was like thunder as he shouted, "How dare you? Their battle hasn't even ended yet. Who allowed you to interfere? Wenren Xiang has already lost. There is no need to continue the fight." Nie Tian knew he was in the wrong, but he still spoke coldly. It was true that he couldn't interfere with their battle, but he also couldn't watch Wenren Xiang die. His martial physique could withstand several raging flame crystals, but Wenren Xiang couldn't. In fact, he could directly block these raging flame crystals. However, he chose to take them head-on with his body because he had other plans. "How dare you?" Wolf C growled and said in a cold tone, "I, Wolf C, as the referee of this battle, can now declare that your Forest Wolf City has lost." "Sure." Nie Tian nodded slightly and said without the slightest hesitation, "If Lord Wolf C decides that Forest Wolf City is lost, we have no complaints and can leave now." "You." Wolf C's eyes darkened. He was speechless for a moment. Now, 2 people from Forest Wolf City had already been eliminated. Only Nie Tian was left, and he was seriously injured by the raging flame crystals. If he judged that Forest Wolf City had lost, it would be too easy for them. Su Kuanga, Ming Tai, Forest Wolf City's people violated the rules first. I can judge that they have lost. Then, Wolf C looked at the remaining 2 people from Songlang City, Su Kuanga and Ming Tai, and said loudly. Then, he changed the topic and said, "But if you think that the battle can continue, then I have no opinion. The battle continues." Not waiting for Su Kuanga to speak, Ming Tai directly spoke. He looked sharply at Nie Tian and said, "You killed my Songlang City's people. How can you let him leave like this?" "Sure." Nie Tian smiled faintly. His face was calm. Everything was within his expectations. He used his body to resist the raging flame crystals so that the people from Songlang City could see that he was seriously injured. In this way, the battle could continue. "Okay, I declare that the battle continues." Wolf C smiled cold and said directly, "Nie Tian." Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled. She shouted Nie Tian, but she didn't know what to say. At this time, she really hoped that this battle would end. She couldn't believe that Nie Tian could still fight with Ming Tai when he was seriously injured. Most importantly, behind Ming Tai, there was still Su Kuanga, who hadn't appeared yet. Even if Nie Tian miraculously defeated Ming Tai, could he defeat Su Kuanga? Su Kuanga was one of the 9 wolves of Wolf's Night Mountain. "I'm fine." Nie Tian turned around and looked at Wenren Xiang. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he smiled indifferently. There was no fear at all. Instead, he had a calm look on his face. Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled. She didn't know why, but her eyes became wet. "Boy, come and die." At this time, Ming Tai's cold voice resounded. The aura of his body rose crazily, and the raging flame crystals around his body became even more terrifying. The previous Thunderbolt warrior died in the hands of Nie Tian because he was careless. He, Ming Tai, would never make such a mistake. He treated Nye Tian as a real opponent, and he would go all out. Okay. Nye Tian smiled indifferently. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he seemed to be provoking Ming Tai. Courting death. Ming Tai felt provoked. His eyes trembled, and he roared. His body shook, and countless raging flame crystals shot out like a waterfall of fire and rushed towards Nye Tian. Buzz! In an instant, the void was pulled tight. The heavens and earth roared, as if it was about to collapse. Under this huge force, the heavens and earth seemed to be wailing. Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled when she saw this scene. Her nerves were stretched taut, and her heart jumped to her throat. Nye Tian, you're dead. Not far from her, Helian Chengfeng had a sinister expression, and he was secretly happy. He didn't care about the outcome of the battle at Wolf Forest City. He only cared about whether Nye Tian would die or not. At this moment, the corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched. Ming Tai, let's see if your raging flame crystal is fiercer than my extreme demon destruction seal. Immediately after, the extreme demon destruction seal appeared in front of the demon eye. Not long ago, he had just used the extreme demon annihilation seal, and the power of the demon eye wasn't full yet. However, it was enough to defeat Ming Tai. Bang! In the next instant, a dark eye power appeared, and it broke through the air, turning into a blade of eye power, and attacked Ming Tai. At this moment, Lang Si felt the fluctuation of eye power in the air. His eyes couldn't help but tremble, and he exclaimed in shock. Not even in his dreams did he expect that Nye Tian was a cultivator with other eyes, and Nye Tian's eye power was so terrifying. Bang, bang, bang. Poof! Then, wherever the blade of eye power passed, the raging flame crystal shattered. Before Ming Tai could react, he felt a black shadow attack him, and then a fist-sized hole appeared on his chest. Instantly, his body trembled, and he was sent flying. While he was still in midair, his entire body was dyed red with blood. At the same time, the raging flame crystals that filled the sky, after losing their support, immediately weakened. Even when they landed on Nye Tian, they didn't hurt him. Moments later, the raging flame crystal vanished, leaving Nye Tian standing in midair like a sharp sword that shone with unparalleled sharpness. Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at Nye Tian, and their expressions were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Chapter 35:05. Wolf's Night, madness high up in the sky. The place was deathly silent. Nye Tianling stood in midair, not saying a word. Everyone stared at Nye Tian with incomparable astonishment in their eyes, their hearts filled to the brim. No one expected that Nye Tian could defeat Ming Tai with just one move. Ming Tai was famous not only in Songlang City, but even in the entire Wolf's Night City. Since he could be ranked as one of the 3 geniuses of the Ming family's younger generation, one could see how powerful his bloodline talent was. However, such a genius bloodline martial artist had actually been defeated by Nye Tian. Moreover, he had been defeated in a single move. How could everyone not be shocked by this? Helian Chengfeng's expression was lifeless. The corner of his mouth twitched violently, as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't make a sound. Wenren Xiang was also stunned and couldn't react for a long time. Why are you so strong? After a long time, a low voice sounded. Ming Tai's figure appeared. He wasn't dead, but his body was covered in blood. Clearly, he was heavily injured and had no more strength to fight. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that he would be defeated by a heavenly charm stage 1 martial artist. You should be glad that you are from the Ming family. Otherwise, you would already be a corpse. Nye Tian smiled and replied coldly. Ming Tai had said the same thing to Helian Chengfeng. However, at this moment, Nye Tian gave it back to him. This wasn't just a humiliation to Ming Tai. It was also a humiliation to Helian Chengfeng. Indeed, Nye Tian could have killed Ming Tai directly. The reason why he didn't do so was because he was afraid. From Wenren Xiang's reaction, it seemed that the Ming family that Ming Tai belonged to was very powerful in Wolf's Night Mountain. Nye Tian didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble, so he didn't kill Ming Tai. Ming Tai's eyes trembled and his face darkened. He wanted to say something, but he spat out a mouthful of blood. Nie Tian no longer paid any attention to Ming Tai. Instead, he turned to look at Wolf Sea in the distance and said, "Lord Wolf Sea, the battle can continue." "All right." After staring blankly for a long time, Wolf Sea finally reacted. He nodded his head, then looked at the last person of Ash Wolf City, Su Kuanga, and said, "Su Kuanga, it's your turn. Don't disgrace the reputation of the Spear Emperor clan." "Yes." Su Kuanga stood there like a block of ice. He nodded blankly and then walked forward step by step. He seemed very calm, but with every step he took, his aura became stronger. What good Wolf Night Wild song. This is going to be interesting. Wolf Sea looked at Su Kuanga. His eyes slightly trembled, and he secretly sneered. Su Kuanga, one of the 9 wolves of Wolf's Night Mountain. The mountain of the night of the wolf. The glory of the wolf. The so-called 9 wolves were the 9 most talented people in the entire Wolf's Night Mountain under 10,000 years old. Su Kuanga was one of the 9 wolves. He had a nickname, Wolf Night Wild Song, the God of Spears. Su Kuanga was a member of the Wolf Night Mountain's Spear Emperor clan, the descendant of the Spear Emperor clan's Monarch spear. In Wolf's Night Mountain, Su Kuanga also had another title, the Strongest Saint. Su Kuanga's strength was at the 9th level of Heavenly Rhythm, and he was known to be invincible among those at the same level. And Nie Tian was only at the 1st level of Heavenly Rhythm. How could he fight against an invincible 9th level Heavenly Rhythm? Wolf Sea coldly looked at Nie Tian. He had already seen that after Nie Tian used the demonic eye, tears of blood flowed out from the corner of his eyes. This undoubtedly meant that Nie Tian's eye power was almost exhausted. Without eye power, Nie Tian's other eye was useless. However, Wolf Sea was very puzzled. Why did Nie Tian only use one eye? Could it be that there was someone else with a single eye? I thought I didn't need to make a move, but I didn't expect there to be an anomaly. At this time, Su Kuanga arrived at the mountain high in the sky. His eyes were as deep as a cold lake, without a trace of fluctuation. The spear intent around his body didn't have much impact on the surrounding void, but it gave people a very frightening feeling. It was as if the spear intent was a ferocious beast that was hiding in the void. The next moment, it would burst out and devour everything. To be able to become an anomaly in your eyes, should I be honored? Nie Tian faintly smiled, equally calm. To be able to fight with me is the glory of your life. Su Kuanga said in a deep voice. His eyes were like ice, cold and calm. Wolf Night Wild Song was indeed crazy. Is that so? Nie Tian's mouth twitched, but he didn't deny it. He could feel the terrifying spear intent around Su Kuanga's body. The latter was definitely an extremely frightening opponent. Make your move. Su Kuanga didn't say anything else. His cold eyes trembled a bit, and then he took a step forward. Suddenly, the void around him shook, as if it was about to collapse. As he stood there, he was like a strange mountain, incomparably majestic, and surged through the sky. Boom! In the next moment, Su Kuanga's spear intent was released, like a stormy sea, striking the void. Suddenly, the space within tens of thousands of meters was filled with violent and overbearing spear intent. What a strong spear intent! Seeing this scene, Nie Tian's eyes couldn't help but tremble. His heart was shocked. Among all the spear users he had seen, Su Kuanga was the absolute number 1. Judging from his spear intent, Su Kuanga had actually reached the 9th layer of Spear Aura Realm. Moreover, Su Kuanga's spear intent was extremely pure, giving people a very vigorous feeling. This meant that during the process of cultivation, he didn't fuse with any external forces, but relied on his own cultivation to reach the 9th layer of Spear Aura Realm. Such a terrifying Spear Dao talent could be called abnormal. One must know that even Nie Tian had to borrow external forces several times, and even absorb the power of the Sword Crystal to barely reach the transcendent, profound Sword Realm. In fact, this kind of breakthrough method was detrimental to the growth of a swordsman. It would cause the sword intent to become impure, and even lead to the collapse of the sword intent. However, Niet Tian had the power of the stars, which had a mixing effect on the sword intent, so his sword intent looked even purer. This was the power of the stars, which was the source of power, bringing a huge potential benefit to Niet Tian. Su Kuanga didn't have a heaven-defying object like the Star Origin Stone, but he could rely on his own strength to cultivate to the 9th layer of Spear Aura Realm. His terrifying talent could be imagined. Wolf Knight Kuanga, worthy of being called the God of Spear. Seeing this scene, Lang Xi's eyes slightly trembled. He was extremely surprised. Of course, he could see how terrifying Su Kuanga was. The latter's strength even exceeded his expectations. This time, Niet Tian would definitely die. Su Kuanga is indeed strong. Helian Chungfeng's eyes trembled. His heart was shocked. Wolf Knight 9 wolves. Which one of them wasn't a peak monster? I have cultivated the Monarch Spear, and with the Monarch Spear intent, I will kill you. At this time, Su Kuanga once again opened his mouth. His mighty voice resounded in the void, like a clap of thunder, vigorous and rolling. Immediately, a golden spear appeared in his hand. The body of the spear was engraved with a golden dragon. As if it had a life of its own, it seemed to be surging on the spear body. Chapter 3506. Emperor's Mad. Song Su Kuanga coldly stood in the void, holding the Emperor's Mad Song in his hand. His spear intent soared to the sky, and an overbearing aura was released. It was as if he was the ruler of the world, as if the heavens and earth had to bow down before him. He was the successor of the Emperor's Spear, and the Emperor's Spear art was known as the Emperor of the Spear. Niet Tian, you have to be careful. This person's spear intent is too strong. You have to use all your strength to fight against him. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's voice was heard. It was obvious that he was worried about Niet Tian. Niet Tian had met many opponents before, but not many could make the Ghost Emperor so worried. All right, Niet Tian replied. 2 energies surged in his body. It was the Sky Evolution Saint Spirit and the Omni-Tribulation Saint Spirit. Facing an opponent like Su Kuanga, if he still held back, he would be courting death. Dying. At this time, Su Kuanga let out a low roar and his figure moved. He soared into the sky like a rainbow. The Emperor's Mad Song streaked across the sky like a lightning bolt piercing through the void. Then, a powerful spear shadow rushed towards Niet Tian like a roaring dragon. Such a terrifying spear intent. The crowd's eyes trembled violently. Su Kuanga's casual attack made the crowd feel a strong fluctuation of spear intent. That kind of momentum was even more terrifying than Ming Tai's when he fully released the power of the Flame Crystal Bloodline. One should know that Ming Tai had used all his strength, while Su Kuanga had just casually attacked with his spear. Niet Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. He instantly felt that his whole body was shrouded by a strong spear intent. The oppressive feeling made his expression change. Su Kuanga's spear intent was more terrifying than he had expected. Boom! In the next moment, Niet Tian's body shook. Suddenly, the sword intent inside his body crazily exploded like a landslide, like a tsunami. The violent sword intent caused the void to tremble, making him feel a lot more relaxed. Saint Heaven-defying sword. Earth and man as one. Stars and moons sync. Immediately after, Niet Tian's eyes darkened. He did not dare to be careless. The demonic sword of 7 death in his hand directly stabbed out. A sword shadow whizzed out, carrying with it the power of the celestial evolution Saint Spirit and the omniscient Saint Spirit. Seeing this, Wolf C's eyes couldn't help but tremble. He could tell that Niet Tian's body contained the power of the Saint Spirit. This made his lips twitch as he sneered in his heart. A heavenly rhythmic warrior actually has an immemorial saint soul. Interesting. Boom! At this moment, the spear shadow and the sword shadow collided with one another, causing the entire heaven and earth to tremble violently. An endless amount of killing and berserk power burst out and spread out in all directions. Bang! Crack! In the next moment, the sword shadow could no longer withstand the pressure and instantly shattered. As for the spear shadow, It only cracked a little before it broke through the layers of raging waves and pressed down on Yetion. Boom, boom, boom. Bang! The roar in Yetion's ears became louder and louder. His eyes slightly darkened as he quickly retreated, but it was still too late. He was instantly hit by the spear shadow and flew backward. His figure flew thousands of meters away before he managed to stabilize himself. However, there were several horrifying wounds on his body. Even his wrists had split open, and he couldn't even hold his sword steadily. He had fought countless people, but this was the first time he was in such a sorry state. His sword was about to fall out of his hand. Yetion, are you okay? The Ghost Emperor was extremely nervous and asked anxiously. I'm fine. Yetion's face was gloomy as he responded in a deep voice. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Su Kuanga. At this moment, Su Kuanga looked at Yetion without the slightest hint of a smile on his face. Instead, he was very surprised and angry. He didn't expect that Yetion could still stand there steadily after being hit by a spear. Yetion was only at the first level of the Heavenly Charm realm. To be able to take his spear attack was simply a disgrace to him. Everyone saw this scene, and their eyes trembled violently. They didn't know what to say. At this moment, they didn't know whether to say Su Kuanga or Yetion was stronger. Although Yetion was seriously injured by Su Kuanga's spear attack, one must know that he was only at the first level of the Heavenly Charm realm. With his cultivation, it was simply unimaginable that he could block Su Kuanga's spear attack. Yetion, it seems that I have underestimated you. At this moment, Su Kuanga opened his mouth coldly. The aura of his body once again skyrocketed. The Emperor's berserk song in his hand was truly like a monarch. It released an incomparably terrifying aura, as if it was the ruler of this world. This guy is really difficult to deal with. Yetion's eyes narrowed as he felt the monstrous sword intent from Su Kuanga's body. He was secretly shocked. Su Kuanga cultivated the Emperor's spear. His Emperor's spear intent was extremely overbearing, vigorous, and terrifying. Even with Yetion's martial body, it was extremely strenuous to withstand the impact of the Emperor's spear intent. Yetion, I, Su Kuanga, respect you as a true opponent. I will give you a dignified death. Prepare to take my second spear attack. High up in the sky, Su Kuanga let out a deep roar. Suddenly, the spear intent in his body surged violently like 10,000 demons dancing wildly. It released a dazzling golden spear intent in the void. Boom! In the next moment, the Emperor's berserk song streaked across the void like a golden dragon. Suddenly, a terrifying spear intent descended, oppressing the void. Then, like a mad dragon, it crazily pressed down on Yetion. Yetion's eyes slightly narrowed. His expression immediately changed. Sword intent crazily released from his body. At the same time, 9 heavenly Tao shackles were released from his body like 9 giant snakes. They danced around his body as if they wanted to devour everything. Kill! Immediately, Yetion let out a low roar. His violent battle intent pushed the sword intent around his body to the extreme. A terrifying sword intent whistled out and rushed towards the spear shadow. Boom! In the next moment, a terrifying collision occurred. The void suddenly trembled. Suddenly, the sky and earth sank, as if it was about to collapse. So strong, the eyes of the crowd trembled. They exclaimed in horror and immediately retreated. Bang! At this moment, another muffled sound came out. Yetion's figure once again flew backward, drawing a bloody arc in the air. Crack, crack, crack. He was still in the air. His body emitted the sound of bones breaking. His whole body seemed like it was about to collapse. However, in the next moment, a pair of star soul wings appeared behind Yetion's back. He forcibly stabilized his body in the air and then stood still. His body slightly swayed. His whole body was in extreme pain. Su Kuanga's spear not only seriously injured him, but also broke several bones in his body. After the spear attack, his injuries became even more serious. Yetion. In the distance, Wenren Xiang's voice sounded. She was nervous and trembling. She wanted Nyetian to admit defeat. The gap between Nyetian and Su Kuanga's strength was too big. After Su Kuanga's 2 spear attacks, Nyetian was still standing there. It was already very powerful. There was no need to continue this battle. I'm fine. Nyetian turned around and looked at Wenren Xiang. He faintly smiled and said, perhaps in the eyes of others, Nyetian had no chance to defeat Su Kuanga. Continuing to fight was just courting death. Chapter 3507. Chapter 352. Chapter 352, the strongest opponent. This guy is so fierce. When the crowd saw Nyetian, their eyes couldn't help but tremble. Their expressions were shocked. Nyetian was seriously injured, yet he still wanted to fight. Was he not afraid of death? Or did he think that Su Kuanga wouldn't dare to kill him? However, Nyetian was still standing after 2 shots, which was already far beyond everyone's expectations. Facing an opponent like Su Kuanga, any rational person would choose to admit defeat. However, Nyetian insisted on fighting. For him, the battle with Su Kuanga was not only a match, but also an opportunity. Su Kuanga was a good opponent that was extremely difficult to meet. If he met such an opponent and became timid, then he would really be stupid. Nyetian, do you still want to fight? At this time, Su Kuanga took a step forward. His whole body's aura was like a rainbow, especially the Emperor's Berserk song in his hand, which stood horizontally in the air as if it wanted to suppress the world. Su Kuanga, our battle has just begun. With a faint smile, the blood at the corner of Nyetian's mouth was wiped clean, and a strange smile appeared in his eyes. Then, with a shake of his body, all the blood on his body was washed away. Even his broken bones were healed in the blink of an eye. Seeing this scene, Su Kuanga's eyes couldn't help but tighten. He was extremely puzzled. He felt that Nyetian's body seemed to have awakened a terrifying power, causing his martial body to instantly recover. At the same time, Lang Xi's eyes trembled. He was extremely shocked. He shouted in his heart, "I power." He felt that Nyetian's body was surging with a majestic I power. After attacking the martial body, it caused the power of the martial body to burst out. It was extremely strange. He noticed that the I power came from Nyetian's other eye. This kid is actually an extremely rare dual variant martial artist. Lang Xi instantly understood. His eyes couldn't help but tremble. He exclaimed in his heart. He had previously found it strange that when Nyetian defeated Ming Tai, he only used one eye. Martial artists with one eye and other pupils were very rare. As for Nyetian, he was a dual-pupiled martial artist, but each of his eyes had awakened a different power. Double-eyed, double abnormality was even rarer. At this moment, Wolf C was looking at Nyetian with an incredulous look in his eyes. There was even a strange fanaticism in them. So far, the power that Nyetian had displayed was too shocking. The power of the dragon vein, the power of the other pupil, the power of the Archean Saint's soul, and the terrifying sword intent. Any one of these powers would allow a cultivator to surpass other cultivators of the same level. Nyetian, on the other hand, had so much power at the same time. No wonder he could jump levels to defeat a 9th-level heavenly charm martial artist. At this moment, Wolf C had a vague feeling that Nyetian's body might be hiding an even more terrifying power. Nyetian, it seems that I have underestimated you. Su Kuanga's eyes slightly sank as he spoke in a cold tone. He then took a step forward, causing the void to sink. Come. Nyetian smiled faintly. His eyes slowly turned pitch black. It was the activation of the Fiend God Body. At this time, he had activated the Fiend God Body. The pressure that his martial body had to endure was unimaginably great. Not long ago, he had already activated the Fiend God Body in his battle with the Forest Wolf City Lord Wenren Tuesday. At this time, his martial body had not fully recovered. Right now, he was forcefully activating the Fiend God Body while he was seriously injured. Good. Su Kuanga felt that Nyetian's aura had changed. It aroused the fighting intent in his heart. With a low roar, a terrifying spear intent soared into the sky. This kid called Nye Tian is so terrifying. He is only at the first level of heavenly charm, yet he can face Su Kuanga so calmly. If he had the same strength as Su Kuanga, I'm afraid that Su Kuanga would not be his match. The crowd looked at Nye Tian, their eyes trembling as they couldn't help but say. At this time, everyone could feel that Nye Tian's aura was much stronger than before. It seemed that Nye Tian really had the strength to fight with Su Kuanga. At this time, Helian Qingfeng was already dumbfounded. His eyes trembled, and he couldn't say anything for a long time. At this moment, he truly understood how terrifying Nye Tian was. If the person standing in front of Su Kuanga was him, he wouldn't know how many times he would have died. Kill! At this time, Nye Tian's voice sounded. He actually took the initiative to attack. He swept the sword in his hand, and a violent sword intent whistled out, oppressing the void and enveloping Su Kuanga. This kind of sword intent can't hurt me. Su Kuanga smiled indifferently. He raised the Emperor's berserk song. Suddenly, a peerlessly overbearing aura, like a rolling hurricane, swept everything and directly destroyed Nye Tian's sword intent. Is that so? At this time, Nye Tian sneered. In his other hand, another sword appeared. Immediately, two swords attacked at the same time. Two terrifying sword intents, in the midst of surging blood energy, fused into one. A terrifying sword shadow, carrying a destructive power, pressed towards Su Kuanga. Su Kuanga felt a violent pressure. It was overwhelming, making him feel threatened. He couldn't help but cry out in surprise. At this time, he understood that Nye Tian's previous sword was just a test. This time, when both swords attacked at the same time, it was the real killing move. Dragon's Roar. However, at this time, Su Kuanga was only surprised. He didn't panic in the slightest. His Emperor's berserk song swept out. Suddenly, there was a dragon roar in the void. Then, a dragon shadow appeared and rolled out. It actually forcibly pushed away Nye Tian's sword shadow. Bang! A muffled sound rang out. Nye Tian's figure retreated several thousand meters and then stood still. On the other hand, Su Kuanga only retreated a few steps and then stood still. However, this scene made everyone's eyes tremble. They sucked in a breath of cold air, and their expressions were extremely shocked. Su Kuanga only retreated a few steps, but in the eyes of everyone, this was even more shocking than Nye Tian being seriously injured. Su Kuanga actually retreated. Su Kuanga, who was known as the strongest holy disciple, was repelled by a first-stage heaven rhythm martial artist. How could such a scene not be shocking? Good. Very good. At this time, Su Kuanga suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with killing intent. He stared at Nye Tian and said in a cold tone, Nye Tian, you are the strongest opponent I, Su Kuanga, have ever met in my life. The strongest opponent. At this time, Su Kuanga could be considered to have taken Nye Tian seriously. Although Nye Tian had blocked two of his spears, at that time, Nye Tian was still being beaten, and now, Nye Tian took the initiative to attack, and even forced him to retreat a few steps. This made him have no choice but to look at this battle and Nye Tian in a new light. Su Kuanga had met many people who were stronger than him, but Nye Tian was the only one who truly made him feel threatened. Even if he was arrogant, he had to admit that if Nye Tian was in the same realm as him, he would definitely not be Nye Tian's opponent. Because of this, he said that Nye Tian was his strongest opponent. Should I feel honored? Nye Tian faintly smiled. The corner of his mouth pulled into a calm arc. He still remembered what Su Kuanga said before the battle. To be able to fight with him was the glory of Nye Tian's life. Nye Tian, you are worthy of me using my true strength, Su Kuanga said with a gloomy face. Immediately, a mysterious aura surged from his body. Then, from his fingertips, several streams of blood chi gushed out and poured into the golden dragon carving above the Emperor's berserk song. In the next moment, a strange scene happened. Chapter 35:08. Golden Dragon Slayer, huh? Nye Tian saw the scene above the Emperor's berserk song, and his eyes darkened in surprise. At this moment, he actually felt an incomparably vigorous blood meridian aura. Emperor's Berserk Song, Golden Dragon Slayer. At the same time, Lang Si saw this scene and his eyes trembled in shock. He never thought that Su Kuanga would be this terrifying, using his own blood chi to awaken the Golden Dragon Seal above the Emperor's Berserk Song, Golden Dragon Seal. It turned out that the Golden Dragon carving above the Emperor's Berserk Song was a Khanate Spear Seal, Golden Dragon Seal. The Golden Dragon Slayer was the power of the Spear Emperor's Su family's bloodline. It existed in different forms in the Su family's bloodline. And Su Kuanga's Golden Dragon Slayer existed above his Yuan Soul Spear, Emperor's Berserk Song, in the form of a Golden Dragon Seal. Therefore, Su Kuanga's Emperor's Berserk Song was actually a primordial spirit bloodline. However, the Golden Dragon Slayer bloodline was extremely powerful. Many of the Su family's warriors had the Golden Dragon Slayer bloodline, but only a few could actually awaken the Golden Dragon Slayer. At such a young age, Su Kuanga was able to awaken the Golden Dragon Slayer with blood chi. It was truly terrifying. Roar! At this time, above the Emperor's Berserk Song, a majestic dragon roar resounded. Immediately after, a golden dragon appeared in the world. It was like a golden streamer surging in the void. It was like a guardian god, twining around Su Kuanga's body. The Golden Dragon Slayer's body was not big, only a dozen meters long, but the dragon chi around it was extremely terrifying, vigorous, and violent, as if there was an abyss of dragon chi within its body. Could this be the Su family's bloodline power, Golden Dragon Slayer? The crowd looked at the Golden Dragon Slayer, their eyes trembling. The shock in their hearts was written on their faces. No one expected that Su Kuanga would actually use the Golden Dragon Slayer at this moment. It's over. The moment when Ren Xiang saw the Golden Dragon Slayer, her beautiful eyes could not help but tremble. Her heart that was hanging in suspense fell to the bottom. She originally thought that there was some hope for Nie Tian, but Su Kuanga's Golden Dragon Slayer instantly made her despair. The Su family's bloodline power was renowned throughout the entire Night Wolf Mountain. Even if Su Kuanga could not display the true power of the Golden Dragon Punisher, it was still not something that Nie Tian could contend against. At this moment, the path before Nie Tian was to admit defeat or die. Su Kuanga, Forest Wolf City, admits defeat. In the next moment, Wen Xiang didn't wait for Su Kuanga to make a move and directly shouted. Everyone was stunned, and they looked at Wen Xiang in astonishment. Could it be that Forest Wolf City was really going to admit defeat, just like this? I won't admit defeat. But at this moment, Nie Tian's voice sounded. It was very calm, but it carried an inviolable intent. He had fought countless people and had never admitted defeat. Even if Su Kuanga's Death Punisher Golden Dragon was terrifying, it was not enough for him to directly admit defeat. Nie Tian, Wen Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled. Looking at Nie Tian from afar, she was speechless. She didn't understand why Nie Tian was still persevering. Continue the battle. At this moment, Wolf C's voice sounded low and powerful. His eyes looked at Wen Xiang, obviously threatening the latter to retreat. Wen Xiang's pretty face froze. It was extremely ugly. At this moment, she felt a strong sense of despair. It seemed that she could only watch as Nie Tian died. Nie Tian, your talent and strength are far beyond my expectations. However, no one can stop me from walking on my path. At this time, Su Kuanga looked at Nie Tian and said indifferently. In his calm voice, there was arrogance and confidence. Nie Tian's path also cannot be stopped. Nie Tian looked at Su Kuanga and responded with a faint smile. Good. Su Kuanga's eyes trembled. Feeling Nie Tian's sharp aura, he laughed and said, Then let's use the last move to decide the winner. As you wish. With a faint smile, Nie Tian's face grew grim as 9 shackles of the Tao of the heavens appeared around him. Like 9 giant snakes, they floated in midair. At the same time, he unleashed his sword intent madly, causing the surrounding void to tremble. Nie Tian, if you only have your original strength, you won't be able to fight against me. Su Kwanga let out a hollow laugh as the Ni Punisher Golden Dragon uttered a roar, causing his aura to skyrocket like a raging wave, causing the space to vibrate under the pressure. However, Nietian did not speak at this moment. He closed his eyes, as if he had entered a mysterious state. Su Kwanga's eyes trembled slightly upon seeing this. Then he said in a cold tone, "No matter what you want to do, I won't give you a chance." He respected Nietian as a real opponent, but he would not be lenient. This was a battle of victory, but also a battle of reputation. The reputation of the Spear Emperor's clan could not be tarnished. Dragon against the 9 heavens, kill. The next moment, Su Kwanga let out a low roar. Suddenly, all the spear intent in his body surged wildly. The endless spear aura instantly condensed in the void, turning into a golden dragon shadow, wrapping around the Ni, executing golden dragon and crazily pressing forward. Boom! At this moment, the void roared, as if it was about to collapse. Ni executing golden dragon, so terrifying. The eyes of the crowd trembled violently. Su Kwanga had awakened the Ni executing golden dragon, and his aura had skyrocketed several times. With his current strength, it was enough to kill a warrior in the heavenly mandate realm. Roar! The golden dragon roared violently, pressing towards Nietian. At this moment, Tianling stood in the void, feeling the power of the 9 heavenly shackles. In his body, a strange aura of heaven and earth surged, as if a sleeping giant beast was slowly being awakened. Nietian, you want to use the power of the heavenly way to stimulate the power of the heart of the sky. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor suddenly came to his senses, his eyes trembled, and he exclaimed in his heart. Nietian was too crazy. He was basically gambling with his life. After Nietian merged with the heart of the sky, he felt that the heart of the sky seemed to be silent. At this moment, he was about to use the power of the heavenly way to awaken the heart of the sky. As long as the heart of the sky was awakened, Nietian's Sword Principle realm could definitely break through. Only with a breakthrough in Sword Principle could he possibly compete with the Ni executing Golden Dragon. However, it was too crazy for Nietian to choose to awaken the heart of the sky at this time. That kid, has he given up? The crowd looked at Nietian, their eyes trembling, and said one after another, "Boom!" But at this moment, a terrifying power was released from Nietian's body, turning into a colorful ripple in the air, extremely mysterious. The heart of the sky is about to awaken. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor seemed to have noticed something, his eyes trembled, and he exclaimed, "This is how." At the same time, Wolf C's eyes trembled, and he was stunned for a moment. He said in a daze, "How the heart of the sky." He was completely shocked, feeling a roar in his head, as if he was about to faint. Chapter 3509. The Awakening of the Sky, the Master of the Sky. Nietian was actually the Master of the Sky. Wolf C's eyes were aghast. The corner of his mouth twitched, as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't. He had never thought that Nietian was the Master of the Sky who had merged with the heart of the sky. Wolf C was well aware of the forces behind the heart of the sky. At this moment, he couldn't help but feel a strong fear towards Nietian. Boom! At this time, Nietian's body once again released a powerful aura, stirring up a terrible storm in the air. Under the impact of this power, the void actually slightly stagnated, as if it was still for a moment. Su Kwanga saw this scene. His eyes couldn't help but narrow. He was very surprised. He actually felt a strong sense of threat from the fluctuations in the void. This was going on. The crowd was also shocked by the scene in front of them, their eyes trembling, not knowing what was going on. That kid, his body seems to have awakened a power. It's getting stronger and stronger. A warrior with good perception looked at Nietian from afar and said in horror. At this time, in Nietian's body, there was indeed a power awakening. It was the power of the heart of the sky. Under the stimulation of this power, his martial body became stronger again. More importantly, the sword intent in his body was becoming more violent, as if it was boiling. The heart of the sky was originally formed by the sword intent of the heaven and earth, and it also had another name, Heaven and Earth Sword Heart, comprehending the Tao of heaven and earth, containing the heaven and earth sword heart. Kill. Su Kuanga felt the aura of Nye Tian's body was crazily soaring. He couldn't help but tremble. He let out a low roar. Boom! Suddenly, the golden dragon in the void pressed down on Nye Tian. The heaven and earth shook, dark clouds rolled, as if it was about to collapse. However, at this moment, Nye Tian was like a boulder standing in the middle of a raging storm, not moving a single inch. In the next moment, the golden dragon pressed down, as if it was going to swallow Nye Tian in the next moment. Boom! At that moment, Nye Tian's eyes snapped open, and a terrifying sword aura shot up into the sky. It was as if a giant had suddenly risen to his feet, and the aura it emanated seemed capable of shaking everything in its path, as if it were going to trample the heavens and trample the earth. Saint Heaven defying sword, unity of heaven and man, Yang's sacrifice. In the next moment, the corners of Nye Tian's mouth twitched as he murmured. His calm voice was filled with a domineering, killing intent that could destroy everything. In that moment, the heart of the sky within Nye Tian awoke. His sword realm, stimulated by the heart of the sky, had finally broken through and reached the realm of sword rhythm. The most direct result of the breakthrough in the sword realm was that he could use the second combination move of the sacred heaven defying sword. Unity of heaven and man, Yang Chen's sacrifice. Previously, he could only use one with earth, sinking stars and moon. Only when using dual swords could he use the move of heaven and earth as one. However, that kind of combination move was only using two sword moves at the same time. It wasn't a real combination move. Now that Nye Tian had broken through his sword realm, the Yang Chen sacrifice was the real combination move. Boom! In the next instant, a gigantic sword silhouette soared into the sky, like a gigantic dragon rushing towards the heavens. It exuded an aura that could shake the heavens, as though it wanted to destroy everything in its path. The four types of space sunk slightly as the two energies collided head-on. Boom! In the void, a terrifying explosion was heard as the terrifying and violent forces collided with each other, causing the space to tremble violently. One sword and one dragon collided with each other, causing a terrifying force to erupt as if the heavens and earth were going to be destroyed. The crowd looked at the scene in front of them in shock. Their eyes trembled as they gasped. They didn't expect this battle to be so intense. If Su Kuanga's terrifying force was within everyone's expectations, then the force displayed by Nye Tian was completely out of everyone's expectations. Nye Tian was only in Heavenly Aura Stage 1. How could the force in his body be so powerful? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The eyes of the crowd trembled. Ear-piercing rumbling sounds were constantly heard in the sky. This was the result of the two forces consuming each other. In the void, streams of turbulence surged out crazily, as if thousands of demons were dancing wildly. Boom, 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 boom. A moment later, a terrifying explosion was heard, followed by a shocking scene. The giant golden dragon couldn't withstand it and collapsed. A terrifying force instantly collapsed and spread in all directions like a tsunami that wanted to annihilate everything. In the next moment, the huge sword shadow streaked across the sky and rushed towards Su Kuanga. The crowd's eyes trembled. At this moment, their hearts were in their throats. The sword shadow's momentum was too powerful. It seemed like it wanted to destroy everything. Could it be that Su Kuanga was going to be killed? Su Kuanga's eyes trembled as he suddenly felt the aura of death. He wanted to resist, but he found that the sword intent in the void had sealed the space, making it difficult for him to even lift the Emperor's berserk song. At this moment, he felt a wave of demonic energy, a dark aura. That aura seemed like it wanted to resist everything, trample on everything, and destroy everything. At this moment, Su Kuanga knew that he had lost and that he would have to pay with his life. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt that the sword aura that was coming towards him was inexplicably weaker, causing his eyes to tremble. Then, he instantly seized the opportunity and used the Emperor's Berserk Song again. A terrifying storm appeared where the tip of the spear was pointing, strangling towards the void. Bang! In the next moment, after a muffled sound, Su Kuanga's figure retreated a few hundred meters and then stood firmly. There was a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth. He was only slightly injured. He stabilized his body and looked towards the distant sky. Nie Tianling was standing there with a raging wind, like a sword god. The crowd looked at Nie Tian, then looked at Su Kuanga. They were stunned for a long time, unable to react. Just now, when Su Kuanga was about to be killed, why was he able to counterattack and eliminate the killing intent? Su Kuanga, this battle is over. At this time, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth slightly raised as he spoke indifferently. You win. Su Kuanga frowned and replied solemnly. He lost to Nie Tian. At the last moment, Nie Tian withdrew his hand in time, which was why he was still standing there. If Nie Tian did not stop, he would have been a corpse by now. He was very confused as to why Nie Tian did not kill him. Su Kuanga lost? When the crowd heard Su Kuanga's words, their eyes couldn't help but tremble. They were shocked on the spot as they looked at Nie Tian with unimaginable shock. Who would have thought that Su Kuanga, one of the 9 wolves of Wolf Night and known as the strongest saint disciple, would be defeated by a first-level heaven rhythm martial artist? Such a scene, if they did not see it with their own eyes, they would not be able to believe it. Why didn't you kill me? At this time, Su Kuanga suddenly raised his head, looked at Nie Tian, and asked. He did not understand why Nie Tian stopped at the last moment. If it was him, he would not be lenient if he had the chance to kill Nie Tian. Chapter 35:10. Concealing killing intent. What we are fighting for is victory and defeat, not life and death. Su Kuanga's eyes trembled as he repeated Nie Tian's words. His complexion was extremely ugly. It was just a simple sentence, but it made him feel too ashamed to show his face. Some people, or most people, could kill for the sake of victory or defeat. However, Nie Tian didn't. He stopped after the match was over. At this time, Nie Tian's face was indifferent and very calm. He did not kill Su Kuanga because he felt that the latter was a very rare martial arts genius, especially his spear Dao talent, which could be called peerless. But unfortunately, he met the even more peerless Nie Tian. Nie Tian was able to defeat Su Kuanga purely because his own strength had exceeded the limit. In the state of the fiend god body, he used the power of the heavens to stimulate and awaken the heart of the sky. With the help of the awakening of the heart of the sky, he drove the breakthrough of the sword realm. The moment the sword realm broke through, Nie Tian's sword intent displayed extraordinary power. Only at that moment, he was able to release such a terrifying power. If he continued to fight with Su Kuanga now, he would most likely lose. Therefore, not killing Su Kuanga was actually a gamble on Su Kuanga's character. If at this moment, Su Kuanga did not admit defeat and the two continued to fight, it would be very troublesome. But Nie Tian believed in his own vision. A person with pure spear intent would disdain to continue fighting after being defeated. Today's defeat, Su Kuanga will never forget it. After a moment, Su Kuanga calmed down, looked at Nie Tian, and slightly bowed, as if to thank him. A momentary victory and defeat is nothing. Nie Tian responded with a faint smile. Su Kuanga slightly nodded and did not say much. At this time, everyone's sluggish expression finally reacted. The shock in their hearts could not be relieved for a long time. Su Kuanga was unexpectedly defeated by Nie Tian. This was something that everyone could not accept. Even if Su Kuanga personally admitted it, everyone could not accept it. Especially the people present. They were all martial artists of Songlang City. Many people even thought that Su Kuanga did not use his full strength. At least now he was not injured. He could still fight and continue to fight. On the other hand, Nie Tian's face was pale. His strength was almost consumed. Su Kuanga, do you really want to admit defeat? At this time, Wolf C's low voice sounded. His eyes were deep as he looked at Su Kuanga and asked meaningfully. Of course, he could see what had happened, but Su Kuanga could not admit defeat and continue to fight. He had already sensed that Nye Tian's aura was unstable and that he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Wolf C. Su Kuanga looked at Wolf C and naturally understood what the latter was hinting at. He faintly smiled and calmly said, "A loss is a loss. I, Su Kuanga, can afford to lose." Lang Si frowned. His complexion was somewhat ugly. Then he sneered. His gaze swept across the people of Songlang City and said, "Su Kuanga, you can afford to lose, but can Songlang City afford to lose? Songlang City sent me to fight. They should have thought of the consequences." Su Kuanga's eyes slightly narrowed. His eyes swept across the people of Songlang City and said loudly, "Today's defeat is because I, Su Kuanga, have failed Songlang City. If Songlang City wants to punish me, Su Kuanga will bear it without complaint. But if you want Su Kuanga to go against his heart of martial arts, it is impossible." His magnanimous voice reverberated in everyone's ears like a thunderclap. The people of Songlang City looked at Su Kuanga. They were stunned and did not know what to say. "Brother Su, today's defeat, I also have a part in it. After we return, if the city lord wants to punish me, I am willing to bear it with you." At this time, Ming Tai came forward and said loudly. Su Kuanga looked at Ming Tai, nodded slightly, and did not say anything. The people of Songlang City were stunned once again, speechless. "Very good." Just at this moment, Wolf C's voice rang out again. He sneered and said, "Su Kuanga, Ming Tai, since you want to hand over the ice and fire spirit springs to the Forest Wolf City, this Wolf C will naturally not stop you. Now, this Lang C announces that the winner of this battle of ice and fire is Sun Lang City." With these words, he looked at Nye Tian with a frosty look in his eyes, filled with killing intent. Phew! When Nye Tian heard Lang Ci's words, the corner of his mouth twitched. He let out a long breath of impure air, and his tense nerves immediately relaxed. The battle between ice and fire had finally come to an end. In the distance, Wenren Xiang was stunned. She wanted to say something, but could not. She really suspected that she was dreaming. Everything seemed so unreal. Sun Lang City actually won. This time, the intensity of the battle of ice and fire far exceeded Wenren Xiang's expectations. If not for Nye Tian, Sun Lang City would not have won. It was no exaggeration to say that Nye Tian completely reversed the situation with his own strength. Helian Qingfeng's face was stiff, his entire person like a wax statue. After a long time, he reacted, not knowing whether to be happy or sad. At this time, the gaze he looked at Nye Tian did not have resentment, only fear and dread. After this battle, he finally understood how big the gap between him and Nye Tian was. "Miss Wenren, let's go." At this time, Nye Tian's figure moved, directly arriving beside Wenren Xiang, preparing to leave. "Okay." Wenren Xiang nodded slightly, took a step forward, slightly bowed to Lang Si, and said, "Lord Lang Si, since this battle of ice and fire is over, this junior will take her leave." "Okay." Lang Si's face was gloomy. He did not say anything, only nodding. His eyes were secretly locked on Nye Tian, the hidden killing intent almost unable to be concealed, but there was some hesitation in his eyes, as if he was afraid of something. He really wanted to kill Nye Tian, because the latter had too much heaven-defying power. But Nye Tian was the Lord of the Sky. This identity made him afraid. Just now, he instigated Su Kuanga to continue fighting. In fact, he wanted to borrow the latter's hand to kill Nye Tian. But Su Kuanga was very principled and did not continue fighting. Lang Si was afraid of Nye Tian's identity, but if he had to watch the latter leave, his heart was really unwilling. At this time, Lang Si suddenly looked at Nye Tian, his gaze slightly sinking, and asked, "Nye Tian, in half a month, the Wolf Night competition will begin. Are you interested in participating?" "I'm not interested," Nye Tian said with a smile. In Lang Si's eyes, he felt a strong killing intent. The latter invited him to participate in the Wolf Night competition, obviously not with good intentions. Lang Si's eyes narrowed. His old face became gloomy again. And at this time, the others were also stunned, extremely surprised. No one thought that Lang Si would invite Nye Tian to participate in the Wolf Night competition. What was even more unexpected was that Nye Tian actually refused. One must know that the Wolf Night competition was the most important martial arts competition of the Wolf Night Mountain. Only the most talented warriors were qualified to participate. Just like among all the warriors present, only Su Kuanga and Ming Tai were qualified to participate. Let's go. Nye Tian ignored Lang Si's reaction, directly turned around and left. Nye Tian. But this time, Lang Si's voice sounded again, and then he waved his hand, throwing something to Nye Tian. Nye Tian suddenly turned around, stretched out his hand, and caught a black token with a wolf's head carved on it. Chapter 35:11. Chapter 356. Chapter 356, where are they? Wolf Night Token. Everyone looked at the token in Nye Tian's hand and couldn't help but tremble in shock. It was hard to believe that Wolf Si had given Nye Tian a Wolf Night token. The Wolf Night token was the proof for a warrior to participate in the Wolf Night contest. Under normal circumstances, warriors who participated in the Wolf Night contest had to go through many rounds of selection before they could obtain the Wolf Night token. Only extremely talented warriors, like Su Kuanga, could obtain the Wolf Night token directly. However, Wolf Si had actually given Nye Tian a Wolf Night token. How could everyone not be surprised? Nye Tian was stunned for a moment. Looking at the Wolf Night token in his hand, he faintly smiled and said, "Lord Wolf Si, what do you mean by this? You're not interested in the Wolf Night contest now, but it won't be long before you become interested." Wolf Si smiled strangely and said, "Take the Wolf Night token first. When you change your mind, you can take the Wolf Night token and come to Wolf Night City. If that's the case, then I will respectfully accept." Nye Tian thought for a moment, faintly smiled, and then put away the Wolf Night token. "Brother Nye, I hope that you can participate in the Wolf Night contest. If there is a chance, I will ask you again." At this time, Su Kuanga looked at Nye Tian and said with a faint smile, "Yeah." Nye Tian nodded but didn't comment further. Then, they didn't stay any longer and immediately left. 3 figures, like flowing lights, disappeared into the sky in the blink of an eye. "Brother Su, is this person really that terrifying?" Ming Tai looked in the direction where Nye Tian and the others disappeared, his eyes slightly trembling as he said in a deep voice, "I, Su Kuanga, also consider myself a martial arts genius, but compared to him, my talent is like the difference between heaven and earth." Su Kuanga said in a deep voice, but his eyes were not dim at all. Instead, they were filled with sharpness. The more powerful the opponent, the more excited he felt. If all the warriors in this world were mediocre, then it would be too boring. "Nye Tian, will you come to the Night of Wolves to fight for supremacy?" On the other side, Wolf Si stared at the sky with a strange expression on his face. At the same time, in the void outside Songlang City. "Pooh!" Nye Tian stood in the air, but his body suddenly trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. "Nye Tian, are you all right?" Seeing this, Wen Rinxiang's pretty face couldn't help but stiffen. She seemed to be very flustered. Helian Qingfeng was also stunned for a moment. His expression was a little strange. "I'm fine." Nye Tian took a deep breath. Although he said that he was fine, his face was as pale as a sheet of paper, without the slightest trace of blood. He was already severely injured before. Then he activated the God Fiend body. Coupled with the awakening of the Heart of the Sky, it had a huge impact on his martial body, causing his injuries to become even more serious. Just now, besides Su Kuanga and the others, he had been holding his breath, not daring to reveal his injuries. At this moment, when he was at a place with no one around, he spat out a mouthful of blood from his chest. Wen Rinxiang sensed Nye Tian's aura. Although it was a little weak, it was very stable. Only then did she let out a sigh of relief. "Let's go back." Nye Tian slightly raised his head. His gloomy gaze swept across Helian Qingfeng's body and said faintly. Helian Qingfeng suddenly felt a fatal threat. He was so scared that cold sweat directly seeped out of his forehead. Just now, when he saw that Nye Tian was seriously injured, he did have some thoughts. However, a glance from Nye Tian completely dispelled his thoughts. He saw with his own eyes that Nye Tian, in a seriously injured state, defeated Su Kuanga. Although it seemed that Nye Tian was seriously injured, who knew what other heaven-defying methods he had? In fact, at this moment, Nye Tian had indeed reached his limit. If Heli and Qingfeng were to take action, it would be very troublesome. With Nye Tian's current state, it would take at least a few days for him to completely recover. Half a day later, Nye Tian and the others returned to Sunlang City. In the main hall of the city lord's residence, Wenren too sat on the main seat. Ha ha ha. After listening to Wenren and Xiang talk about the battle of ice and fire, Wenren too laughed wildly. He was obviously very happy. He said, I didn't expect that after so many years, my Sunlang City finally took back the ice and fire springs. Xiang, the three of you are my Sunlang City's great heroes. Father, this time's battle of ice and fire is all Nye Tian's credit. He single-handedly defeated the 3 fighters from Sunlang City. Wenren Xiang nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, Is that so? Wenren too was taken aback for a moment, but the look in his eyes was a little strange. Then he laughed and asked, Xiang, quickly tell Father, who are the people that Sunlang City sent to fight this time? Su Kuanga from the Su family, Ming Tai from the Ming family, and another fighter. Wenren Xiang nodded and replied, Su Kuanga, Ming Tai. When Wenren too heard these 2 names, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He was extremely shocked. He suddenly turned to look at Nye Tian and said in horror, Nye Tian, you really defeated Su Kuanga and Ming Tai. He originally thought that Sunlang City was careless this time and sent out some weak fighters. He didn't expect that there would be 2 genius fighters, especially Su Kuanga. He had the reputation of being the god of spears and was known as the strongest holy disciple. He was also one of the top geniuses of the 9 Wolves. Such a character was actually defeated by Nye Tian. It was really inconceivable. I was just lucky. Nye Tian responded with a faint smile. His face was calm. Wenren too's eyes trembled. He was extremely shocked. Of course, he knew that to be able to defeat Su Kuanga and Ming Tai was definitely not as simple as luck. City Lord, I'm a little injured and need a rest. I'll take my leave first. Nye Tian didn't say anything more. He stood up and was ready to go back to rest. Good. Wenren too repeatedly agreed. His eyes flickered, and he looked relieved. Nye Tian nodded with a smile and walked out. However, when he walked to the door, he suddenly stopped. He turned to look at Wenren too and said with a smile, City Lord, I want to see my friends first. Wenren too was stunned for a moment. His face flashed with an ugly expression. He immediately returned to normal and said with a smile, Nye Tian, you've just come back. It's too tiring. Moreover, you're injured. You should take a good rest. When your injuries are better, it won't be too late to see them. I want to see them now. Nye Tian's eyes sank. His expression changed in an instant. His tone also became a lot tougher. Wenren too saw that Nye Tian's expression changed. He couldn't help but frown. His expression became ugly. Nye Tian's heart sank as he asked, What's going on, City Lord? A murderous aura appeared in his eyes. Just now, he noticed that there was something wrong with Wenren too's eyes. He was avoiding him from time to time. He deliberately asked Duanmu Lu and the others. Wenren too actually panicked. Wenren too frowned. He couldn't say anything. Chapter 35:12. Demonic Moon Wolf in the hall. Nye Tian's expression suddenly changed, causing the atmosphere in the hall to become strange and oppressive. Nye Tian, don't be agitated. Listen to me slowly. Wenren too looked at Nye Tian and panicked, his voice trembling. Where are they? Nye Tian's gaze was gloomy as he spoke word by word. His entire aura changed, revealing a chilling intent. I can't tell you. Wenren too looked at Nye Tian and said coldly with a gloomy expression. I must know. Nye Tian's eyes trembled. He took a step forward, shattering the bluestone floor beneath his feet. A sword aura surged from his body, and a demonic aura surged from his eyes. It was extremely terrifying. Tian, I don't want to kill you. Don't force me. Wenren Tu clenched his fists and said in a deep voice with his hands behind his back, Kill me. Tian's gaze changed again. The blood in his body seemed to be boiling as he asked coldly, I risked my life to help Forest Wolf City retrieve the ice and fire spirit spring. But you want to kill me? I don't want to kill you. Don't force me. Wenren Tu's expression was gloomy and murderous intent was surging in his eyes. I'm forcing you? Tian frowned as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. His breathing suddenly became heavy as he said, I gave my friend to you, and now he's gone. I'm asking for you, but you say I'm forcing you? So, if I don't care about my friend's life or death, then I'm not forcing you? Wenren Tu, if you don't hand over my friend today, I'll destroy Forest Wolf City. His deep voice was filled with undisguised, murderous intent. Destroy Forest Wolf City? Wenren Tu looked at Tian and sneered. Tian, how arrogant of you. What makes you think you can destroy my Forest Wolf City by yourself? You can try. Tian's eyes were as cold as ice. He took a step forward, and the violent sword aura around him almost caused the entire hall to collapse. However, he didn't make a move. He didn't want to completely fall out with Wenren Tu until the last moment. Father, what's going on? At this time, Wenren Xiang stood up and asked, Tian, you should leave now? Wenren Tu's face was gloomy. He ignored Wenren Xiang and looked at Tian instead, saying, Your friends, just consider them dead. Where are they? Tian's gaze trembled. He could no longer restrain himself. With a low roar, a wave of sword chi soared into the sky. With a loud bang, the main hall directly collapsed. The huge boulders were directly crushed into dust by the violent sword chi. Wenren Tu's expression changed as he was shocked. He did not expect Tian's aura to be this terrifying. Wenren Xiang and Helian Chengfeng were also dumbfounded, looking at Tian with blank and shocked expressions. Not long ago, Tian was seriously injured. In just half a day, he had actually recovered to this extent. Wenren Tu, I'll ask you one last time. Where are my friends? Tian's eyes shone with a cold light, and a dark aura could be vaguely seen surging within them. It was very terrifying and gave people a feeling of great pressure. Wenren Tu looked at Tian, and his eyes trembled. He actually felt a strong threat, causing his mind to tremble. Tian was so frightening that it made him shiver with fear. Father, speak. Wenren Xiang knew how terrifying Tian was. He didn't want Tian to fall out with the Forest Wolf City. His forehead was covered in cold sweat as he shouted, Father, speak quickly. Helian Chengfeng was also anxious and nodded heavily. If Tian and Wenren Tu fell out, he would also suffer. It's demonic moon wolf's people. Wenren Tu hesitated for a long time before he finally spoke. Demonic moon wolf. Wenren Xiang and Helian Chengfeng, after hearing this name, both exclaimed in shock. They looked panic-stricken, as if they had heard something very terrifying. What's an evil moon heavenly wolf? Tian asked in a deep voice. The master of the wolf's night mountain. Wenren Tu nodded. His expression was very ugly. Tian, the force behind the heart-devouring blackstone that you're looking for is demonic moon wolf. Wenren Xiang looked at Tian and said, Demonic moon wolf controls the entire wolf's night mountain. All the forces here have to listen to demonic moon wolf. Tian's expression was gloomy. His eyes were dark and surging with a cold light. So the force behind the heart-devouring blackstone that he was looking for was demonic moon wolf. After a long time, Tian looked at Wenren Tu and asked coldly, Demonic moon wolf's people, why do they want to capture my friends? Wenren Tu's gaze trembled and involuntarily flickered. After hesitating for a long time, he said, I found evil moon wolf's people. Your friends are quite talented, so I gave them to evil moon wolf's people. What? After hearing Wenren Tu's words, Tian's pupils suddenly shrank and turned crimson. He roared like a wild beast and took a step forward. He came to Wenren Tu's side. His hand stretched out like an iron pincer and tightly gripped the latter's neck. Tian, Wenren Tu was not prepared at all. He immediately fell into a dead end. The pressure from Nie Tion's hand made him unable to speak. At this time, as long as Nie Tion directly exerted force, he could easily snap his neck. Nie Tion don't. At the same time, Wenren Xiang screamed, frightened until her little face turned pale. Helian Xingfeng was similarly stunned, unable to speak. No one would have thought that Nie Tion would suddenly have such an action. Why'd you do this? Nie Tion, risked my life to win back the ice and fire spirit springs for Forest Wolf City. Is this how you repay me? Nie Tion's eyes were murderous. He stared fixedly at Wenren Tu, his hands trembling. He was going to kill Wenren Tu in the next instant. He staked his life for the battle of ice and fire. But Wenren Tu actually took advantage of his absence to let demonic Moon Wolf's people capture Duanwu Lu and the rest. How could this not make him furious? Nie Tion, I beg you, don't kill my father. At this time, Wenren Xiang suddenly knelt down, tears streaming down her face. Nie Tion turned around and glanced at Wenren Xiang, then immediately roared like a wild beast, but his hand slowly loosened. In the end, he still did not kill Wenren Tuesday. Wenren Tu instantly broke free, panting heavily a few times. The gaze he looked at Nie Tion was extremely fearful. In that instant just now, in Nie Tion's hands, he was desperate and helpless like a little lamb. Wenren Tu, I'll leave your life here first. If anything happens to my friends, I will definitely kill you. Nie Tion looked at Wenren Tu and said word by word. Yes, 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 yes. Wenren Tu gulped and nodded repeatedly like a pug. How was there any semblance of a city lord? Tell me now, what the hell is going on? Nie Tion's gaze was deep and cold as he asked. And Wenren Tu nodded repeatedly and said, I gave them to demonic Moon Wolf's people to remove the Forest Wolf curse mark on my body. My Forest Wolf curse mark can't be suppressed anymore. If I still don't remove it, I'll die without a doubt. As he spoke, Wenren Tu lifted his back, revealing a back riddled with holes. Chapter 35:13. Chapter 358. Chapter 358 Night of the Wolf, huh? Nie Tion saw the wound on Wenren Tu's back and couldn't help but frown. Bloody wounds covered Wenren Tu's back. They were so deep that his bones could be seen. It was a ghastly sight to see his flesh tumbling about. Most shocking of it all was that a layer of black colored talisman markings surged on the wound, and it carried a dense, baleful aura and the pungent smell of blood. It wasn't hard to imagine what kind of torture Wenren Tu had to endure every day with such a wound. Father, this. Wenren Xiang's bright eyes were trembling, and they were clearly filled with tears. She was momentarily speechless. She didn't know that Wenren Tu was suffering this kind of torture every day. Xiang, I'm fine. Wenren Tu tidied up his clothes, forced a smile, and said, The Forest Wolf curse has been suppressed. It's just a little painful, but it won't kill me yet. Father, Wenren Xiang's eyes trembled while her tears couldn't help but flow out in the end, and she sobbed endlessly. In order to remove the Forest Wolf curse mark, you gave my friend to Evil Moon Wolf's people, right? Nie Tion looked at Wenren Tu and asked coldly. Yes. Wenren Tu nodded heavily and said with a bitter face, My Forest Wolf curse seal was only suppressed, but not removed. He had indeed given Duanwu Lu and the others to Evil Moon Wolf as an exchange. Evil Moon Wolf needed these young and talented warriors. Unfortunately, Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf's people did not remove his Forest Wolf curse mark. They only helped him temporarily suppress it. Nie Tion's expression was gloomy. After a long time, he asked, Your Forest Wolf curse mark was left behind by Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf's people? The Forest Wolf curse mark was indeed very terrifying. When Nie Tion first met Wenren Tu and fought with him, he knew that if not for Wenren Xiang appearing, he and Wenren Tu would have been in great danger. Nie Tion estimated that the Forest Wolf curse mark was similar to his Holy Soul curse mark from before. While allowed the martial artist to possess powerful strength, it also caused great pressure on the martial artist. As the Forest Wolf curse seal became more and more powerful, the growth of Wenren Tu's martial body couldn't be compared to it, and he couldn't bear it anymore. Yes, Wenrintu's expression was gloomy as he nodded and said, Night Wolf Mountain has 19 cities, and each city lord has a seal bestowed by Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf. Demonic Moon Sky Wolf used this method to rule Wolf's Night Mountain. Nyetian frowned and asked coldly. Wenrintu nodded again and said, Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf calls us, who have been cursed, wolf slaves. The 19 cities of the Night Wolf Mountain are like 19 fortresses that surround and protect the entire Night Wolf Mountain. Nyetian's face was gloomy as he understood many things in his heart. Clearly, Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf's people were just using these city lords as slaves to guard Wolf Night Mountain. In order to make these slaves obedient, the city lords of the 19 cities were cursed. Few outsiders come to Wolf Night Mountain. At this time, Wenrintu looked at Nyetian and said, Your friends are very young and extremely talented. They are the people that Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf needs as wolf slaves. I thought that if I handed them over, Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf would help me remove the curse seal. Nyetian's expression suddenly changed, and he said in a low voice, You said that my friends will become wolf slaves? Yes. Wenrintu nodded with an ugly expression. Nyetian's eyes were filled with killing intent. After a long silence, he asked, Where were they captured? Wolf Night Mountain City. Wenrintu answered subconsciously, but then he realized that something was wrong and hurriedly said, Nyetian, you can't go to Wolf Night Mountain City. Your friends have already become wolf slaves. You can't save them. If you go, you will only lose your life in vain. Were they captured? Nyetian's face was cold. He ignored Wenrintu's persuasion and asked coldly. Wenrintu's expression was ugly. He hesitated for a moment and said, About half a day ago. Nyetian suddenly raised his head and his eyes swept over Wenrintu's day. He left Wolf Night Mountain City only a day ago. In other words, as soon as he left, Wenrintu informed Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf's people. No wonder Wenrintu asked Nyetian to leave Duanmu Lu and the others in the city. It turned out that everything had been planned. If it weren't for Wenrin Xiang's feelings, Nyetian would have already killed Wenrintu. Nyetian, are you really going to save them? Wenrintu looked at Nyetian and asked cautiously, Do I have a choice? Nyetianling responded coldly. If the person who was captured was Wenrin Xiang, would you not save them? Wenrintu's expression froze. He looked at Wenrin Xiang and was speechless. Nyetian, I'll go with you. At this time, Wenrin Xiang suddenly took a step forward and looked at Nyetian with a burning gaze. Xiang, or what are you going to do? Wenrintu was stunned for a moment. He immediately reacted and reprimanded coldly. It was obvious that he knew the danger of this trip and didn't want Wenrin Xiang to take the risk. Father, you did it. I can't stand idly by. Wenrin Xiang's pretty face was gloomy. Moreover, Nyetian helped us win back the Ice and Fire Spirit Springs. We owe him a great favor. I can't watch him take the risk alone. What's more, if it weren't for him, I would have lost my life long ago. At this time, the scene of Nyetian withstanding Ming Tai's raging flame crystal with his own body in order to save her appeared in her mind. This time, she must go to Wolf Night City with Nyetian. Wenrintu was stunned. He didn't expect the situation to develop to this point. If Wenrin Xiang went to Wolf Night City with Nyetian and something happened to her, then wouldn't he, as her father, be better off dead? Father, I've decided. Wenrin Xiang didn't care about Wenrintu's expression and said calmly but firmly. Wenrintu's expression was ugly. After a long silence, he finally asked, Wolf Night City doesn't allow others to enter. How do you plan to go? He asked this as an agreement to let Wenrin Xiang and Nyetian go to Wolf Night City together. Wenrin Xiang thought for a moment and said, The Wolf Night struggle is about to begin. We will enter Wolf Night City in the name of participating in the Wolf Night struggle. This thing is for you. It should allow one of you to enter the city. At this time, Wenrintu suddenly took out a token and handed it to Wenrin Xiang. Wolf Night token. Nyetian and Wenrin Xiang exclaimed at the same time when they saw the token. They didn't expect that Wenrintu could actually take out a Wolf Night token. You've seen the Wolf Night token? Wenrintu was stunned. He was equally surprised. How did Nyetian and Wenrin Xiang know about the Wolf Knight token? Nyetian frowned and took out a token. It was the Wolf Knight token that Wolf C gave him before. Chapter 35:14. The strange King Nyetian looked at Wenrin Tu and briefly told him about how he obtained the Night Wolf Order. After listening to Nyetian, Wenrin Tu immediately exclaimed, Nyetian, if that's the case, then you can't go to Night Wolf City. Can't you see? That wolf commander is clearly up to no good. He wants you to become a wolf slave. Although Nyetian did not explain it in detail, Wenrin Tu had already heard some clues. That wolf commander was clearly plotting against Nyetian. I know, Nyetian responded with a calm expression. At this time, even if there was a mountain of blades and a volcano ahead, he could only go. Could he give up on Duanmu Lu and the others? That Wolf C works for Evil Moon Heavenly Wolf, right? Nyetian asked calmly, looking at Wenrin Tuesday. Yes. Wenrin Tu nodded heavily. His face was very ugly. If he had known that things would turn out like this, he would not have betrayed Duanmu Lu and the others. But at this moment, it was too late for regrets. How much do you know about the Evil Moon Wolf? What is the status of that wolf commander in the Evil Moon Wolf? How many experts are there in the Evil Moon Wolf? Nyetian asked with a stern expression. The Evil Moon Wolf is a mysterious organization. I don't know much about it. Wenrin Tu frowned deeply and said, however, Wolf Commander's status in the Evil Moon Wolf should not be high. I heard that above Wolf Commander, there are the 9 Great Wolf Kings and the mysterious Wolf Emperor. Rumor has it that the strength of the 9 Great Wolf Kings are at the heavenly mandate 9th level Saint Masters. No one knows the strength of the Wolf Emperor, but it is very likely that he is an expert at the level of Saint Lord Tianyi. Nyetian frowned, and his expression did not look good. Although the heavenly mandate 9th level Saint Masters and Saint Lord Tianyi were not experts in the entire sacred world, they were definitely at the peak of strength in the 7th sacred world of cultivators. After all, the 7th sacred world of cultivators was only an elementary sacred world. The level of the world in the sacred world was different, so the limits of martial arts were different as well. Just like in the planar worlds, the 3,000 minor realms, Shumi world, and the heaven realm's divine realm. Although they were all planar worlds, the limits of a martial artist's strength were completely different. In the 7 cultivators' sacred world, reaching the cultivation of Sage Monarch Tianyi was already the limit of the martial Tao. More importantly, Nyetian was only at the first tier of heavenly rhythm and had just entered the holy realm. Even if he activated his god-demon body, he would only be comparable to a warrior at the 9th tier of heavenly rhythm or a weaker heavenly mandate Saint Master. Apart from the mysterious Wolf Emperor, there were also 9 Wolf Kings in the demonic Moon Heavenly Wolf. It was no exaggeration to say that any Wolf King could kill Nyetian in an instant. In this way, it would be extremely difficult to rescue Duanmu Lu and the others. After that, Nyetian asked Wenrin Tu a few more questions before preparing to head to Wolf Knight City. Wenrin Xiang looked at Nyetian and said hesitantly, Nyetian, your injuries are so serious. Let's wait for you to recover first. Nyetian glanced at Wenrin Xiang and said in a deep voice, let's go now. I can recover on the way. Wenrin Xiang knew that Nyetian was eager to save them, so she didn't say anything more and nodded. Nyetian and Wenrin Xiang didn't stay any longer. After leaving Wolf Forest City, they headed toward Wolf Knight City. Wolf Knight City was located in the core of Wolf Knight Mountain. It was located in the center of the mountain range and was very far from Wolf Forest City. Even if Nyetian and Wenrin Xiang ran day and night, it would still take them a few days to get there. After entering Wolf Knight Mountain, Nyetian didn't speed up. Instead, he moved forward at a normal speed. He was injured and needed to use the time on the road to recover. If he entered Wolf Knight City with an injured body, he wouldn't have a chance to save Duanmu Lu and the others. Wenrin Xiang, Wolf Knight City is so vast. There must be some sacred materials in the mountain, right? Nyetian glanced at Wenrin Xiang and asked indifferently. The various medicinal herbs in the world were divided into spirit grade, god grade, saint grade, and so on according to the major grades. They were also referred to as spirit, god, and saint materials. Each major grade was further divided into 9 grades. In the planar world, Nietian had paid more attention to spirit materials. At that time, he was still a spirit alchemist. However, after coming to the realm, because he no longer cultivated alchemy, he didn't pay much attention to the various sacred materials. He couldn't help but ask when he saw the lush greenery of Wolf Night Mountain. Yes. Wen Rinxiang nodded and said, "There are many sacred materials in Wolf's Night Mountain. The most famous one is the werewolf flower, which is a genuine third-rank sacred material. Its medicinal power is very strong, and it can greatly improve a warrior." Werewolf flower. Nietan nodded slightly and murmured, "This name is quite novel. There are many sacred beasts in Wolf Night Mountain. Many mercenary groups come here specifically to capture sacred beasts." Wen Renxiang thought that Nietian was very interested in this and couldn't help but add, "Yes." Nietian nodded and didn't say anything else. Following that, as Nietian's strength slowly recovered, the duo's speed also increased significantly. 2 days later, the duo arrived outside a canyon. Nietian, according to the map, we will see Wolf Night City after passing through this canyon. Wen Rinxiang took out the map with an excited expression. This was also her first time coming to Wolf Night City, so she couldn't help but feel excited. Nietian nodded slightly and looked at the canyon in front of him. He couldn't help but furrow his brows. The canyon looked very long and serene. On both sides were mountain cliffs that were tens of thousands of meters tall. It was steep and precipitous. For some reason, Nietian faintly had an ominous feeling when he saw the canyon in front of him. "Nietian, let's go." Wen Rinxiang was very excited at this moment. She laughed and directly stepped into the canyon. Nietian frowned and hurriedly followed. The moment they entered the canyon, Nietian immediately felt a rush of cold air, which made the ominous feeling in his heart even stronger. He felt that the surrounding space was filled with a strange, evil aura. It seemed a little familiar, but also very strange. It was very strange. "Nietian, are you all right?" Wen Rinxiang sensed that Nietian's expression wasn't right and couldn't help but ask. "I'm fine." Nietian forced a smile and calmed himself down. "Oh," Wen Rinxiang replied and didn't ask any more questions. Following that, the two of them walked for about 10. Li Nietian's expression became more and more unsightly. He could feel that the evil aura in the air was getting thicker, to the point that he felt like he couldn't breathe. "Nietian, what's wrong?" Wen Rinxiang panicked when she saw Nietian's forehead covered in sweat. She took a step forward and supported Nietian. Nietian looked at Wen Rinxiang with an extremely strange expression. Even with his powerful martial body, he was still having trouble breathing, but Wen Rinxiang didn't feel anything. What was going on? Chapter 35:15. What's going on? "Nietian, are you all right?" Wen Rinxiang asked in a panic when she saw Nietian vomiting blood all of a sudden. Nietian took a deep breath, and the strange fluctuations inside of him weakened slightly. However, his face was still as pale as a sheet of paper, which made him look very scary. Although he could feel the strange energy weakening, he could feel a tearing pain in his body, as if every muscle and bone in his body was being stretched by some force. "I'm fine." Nietian endured the excruciating pain as he nodded slightly and asked, "Wen Rinxiang, don't you feel anything?" "Feel what?" Wen Rinxiang was confused. She had no idea what Nietian was talking about. "How is this possible?" Nietian frowned, and his expression became very unsightly. He couldn't believe that he was the only one who sensed the evil aura in the air. "Nietian, what's going on? Are you all right?" Wen Rinxiang asked with flickering eyes. She was frightened by Nietian. "I'm fine." Nietian forced a smile. He did not want Wen Rinxiang to worry. The Ghost Emperor did not say anything either. It was obvious that he did not understand what was happening to Nietian. "Wen Rinxiang, let's leave this valley." Nietian looked at the walls around him. He could feel a faint layer of black qi lingering on the mountain. He leaned on Wen Rinxiang and said in a deep voice. He did not have any energy left. It was as if some hidden force in his body had been activated, and he could not endure it. "Sure," Wen Rinxiang said as she held Nietian's arm and sped off. However, this valley was extremely long. They had not even covered half of it after half a day. Nie Tian, are you alright? When Rinxiang saw that Nie Tian's face was even worse. His body was as pale as a piece of paper, and he was covered in cold sweat. His body was burning hot, as if he was being roasted. She knew that something must have happened to Nie Tian. I'm fine. Nie Tian was gasping for breath. Not only was his entire body in pain, as if he was surrounded by raging flames, but he also felt like he was suffocating. It was as if there was a giant, invisible hand pressing down on his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. When Rinxiang's beautiful face was unsightly, and she couldn't help but be slightly flustered. Let's go. Quickly leave this canyon, Nie Tian said in a deep voice as he endured the pain. Wen Rinxiang nodded and dashed forward with Nie Tian in tow. Pooh! However, at this moment, Nie Tian's body suddenly collapsed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Nie Tian. Wen Rinxiang quickly held on to Nie Tian, only to see that the blood he spat out was actually black in color. Furthermore, there was an evil aura being emitted from it, along with a foul stench. You've been poisoned? Wen Rinxiang was shocked. She helped Nie Tian to the side of a giant rock with a shocked expression. I don't know either. Nie Tian panted heavily and shook his head. He was feeling extremely uncomfortable, as if his body was about to explode. But at this moment, his consciousness was still clear. He didn't think that he had been poisoned. He had the 9 dragon veins, and with the heavenly punishment force tempering his body, as well as the sacred spirit blood seal, ordinary poisons wouldn't be able to harm him. Furthermore, none of the people he had come into contact with during this period of time were experts in using poisons. It was impossible for them to poison him without him knowing. All the suspicious points pointed to this canyon. Before entering the canyon, Nie Tian already had a bad feeling, and after entering the canyon, he felt an evil aura, which made him feel more and more uncomfortable. There must be some kind of force in this canyon that stimulated the other force in Nie Tian's body, causing it to awaken. Let's go, Nie Tian guessed. He forced himself to stand up and prepare to move forward. He had to leave this canyon, or else the situation would only worsen. Wen Rinxiang held on to Nie Tian, but the latter was still like a pile of mud. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't support him. Nie Tian felt as if his entire body was being torn apart, and he couldn't muster any strength. I'll carry you. Wen Rinxiang frowned. Then, without giving Nie Tian a chance to speak, she directly carried Nie Tian on her back. Nie Tian's face was taut, and his face began to turn black, as if he had been poisoned. At this moment, he could only endure it and think about it after leaving this canyon. Oh, what a loving couple. Just then, a deep voice rang out. Then, a figure in black descended from the sky and blocked Wen Rinxiang's way. Who are you? Wen Rinxiang was shocked as she stared at the person. Little girl, if you want to know who I am, then come over here and whisper into my ear. I will definitely let you know who I am. The person's eyes were filled with lust as he looked up and down Wen Rinxiang's body. He even stuck out his tongue as he spoke in a wretched manner. F***ck off. When Wen Rinxiang saw this scene, no matter how stupid she was, she knew who the latter was. She growled in a low voice. Little girl, isn't it a waste for such a beautiful woman like you to follow a cripple? Why don't you follow me? I promise you'll have a taste of the best in the world. The person smiled even more wretchedly as he stared at Wen Rinxiang. His eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. You're seeking death. Wen Rinxiang's eyes quivered as she became furious. She growled and put Nie Tian to the side. She said in a low voice, if you don't F***ck off, don't blame me for being rude. Oh. The person rubbed his chin and nodded. Little girl, come at me. I sure want to see how rude you're going to be. Bastard. Wen Rinxiang was completely enraged. She howled, and the 9 floating leaves plant attacked. It pierced through the air and formed a green blade in the air that headed towards the person. Little girl, you've got some tricks up your sleeve. The person smiled evilly and moved. Like a ray of black light, he dashed towards Wen Rinxiang. Wen Rinxiang's face changed color as she screamed. In the next moment, that person somehow appeared behind her, reached out a hand, and directly grabbed her neck. You? In an instant, Wenren Xiang was speechless. Damn it! Nye Tian roared inwardly. He saw everything that was happening, but he was powerless to do anything. He wanted to stand up, but he found that his body was like a pile of mud, and he couldn't summon any strength. What was going on? Nye Tian was sweating profusely. He wanted to clench his fists, but he didn't have the strength to do so. Little girl, you mind? At this time, the man actually laughed lewdly and prepared to make his move on Wenren Xiang. Third brother, what are you doing? However, right at that moment, a deep voice rang out, and two black-robed figures appeared in front of Nye Tian and the others. Chapter 35:16. Wait! Just as the third brother was about to make a move on Wenren Xiang, one of the men in black seemed to have noticed something and hurriedly shouted, Second brother, what's wrong? The third brother looked at the man in black and asked with a frown, This girl seems to be Wenren Tu's daughter. The second brother looked at Wenren Xiang and said in a deep voice, Wenren Tu. The leader was stunned for a moment. Then his face darkened and said, Although Wenren Tu's strength isn't that great, he is still the city lord of the Forest Wolf City. If this girl is his daughter, I'm afraid there will be some trouble. Big brother, second brother, it's no trouble at all. This little girl is too pretty. At worst, we can just kill her after we play with her. Anyway, Wenren Tu won't know who killed his daughter. The black-clothed man's third brother didn't give up. He laughed and said. The other two men in black looked at each other and finally nodded and said, Then hurry up, we'll wait for you in front. Okay. The third brother laughed and was extremely proud. At this moment, the old man in black noticed Nye Tian and said coldly, Third brother, I'll take care of this brat for you. Second brother, this brat seems to be poisoned. Don't bother with him. The third brother laughed and said with a gloomy face, Today, I'm going to play with his woman in front of him. This will be a different kind of fun. You, hurry up. After you're done, clean it up. The second brother frowned and shook his head. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left. After the two black-clothed men walked far away, the third black-clothed man chuckled. He caressed Wenren Xiang's face with one hand, but his eyes were fixed on Nye Tian's body. He said with a sinister smile, Boy, you better watch carefully how I play with your woman. Rip. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and tore Wenren Xiang's clothes. Her snow-white skin was immediately revealed. It was extremely alluring. Bastard! Wenren Xiang cried out in alarm. She wanted to resist, but she discovered that her entire body was enveloped by a strange force, and she was actually unable to exert any strength. This man in black was much stronger than her. He was already a heavenly mandate 5th-tier Saint Master. She could not fight against him at all. Damn it! The scene in front of him caused Nye Tian's eyes to tremble. His eyes were filled with a terrifying rage. Every bone in his body, every meridian, every inch of flesh and blood felt like they were about to ignite. However, the angrier he got, the more intense the tearing sensation in his body became. The feeling of his body being torn apart by the raging flames was driving him crazy. Brat, are you angry? The black-clothed man chuckled. His eyes were filled with a lustful light as he laughed in a perverted manner. You deserve to die. At this moment, Nye Tian suddenly stood up. His entire body was surging with an extremely terrifying dark aura. His entire body seemed to be shrouded in darkness, like a dark abyss. At this moment, the black-clothed man suddenly felt a terrifying demonic aura rushing toward him. He frowned and could not help but let out a cry of surprise. He did not expect that Nye Tian, who was as weak as mud just a moment ago, would suddenly stand up and even release such a terrifying power. Brat, looks like I'll kill you first. However, in the next moment, the black-clothed man calmed down. He smiled coldly and directly threw Wenren Xiang aside. Then, he took a step toward Nye Tian. His entire body's aura exploded, and he blasted out a fist. The terrifying fist shadow was like a mountain, pressing toward Nye Tian. Bang! In the next moment, the terrifying fist shadow directly hit Nye Tian's body. A terrible muffled sound was heard, and the ground was stirred up tens of meters high. Nietian, Wenren Xiang saw this scene, and her eyes trembled as she screamed. This black-clothed man was a heavenly mandate 5th-tier Saint Master. The power of his fist was enough to destroy a mountain. How could Nietian withstand it when he was seriously injured? You deserve to die. However, at this moment, a low, murderous voice sounded. Then, in the rolling soil, a figure directly rushed over like a wild beast. The black-clothed man was stunned. Before he had time to react, Nietian had already come to his side. Bang! Nietian directly blasted out a fist, smashing toward the black-clothed man's face. The latter's eyes trembled, and he subconsciously reached out to block, but a muffled sound was heard, and there was a bloody scene in front of him. His arm was actually smashed by Nietian's fist. Brat! The black-clothed man was shocked. Just as he was about to open his mouth to say something, Nietian greeted him with a second punch. Boom! With a muffled sound, the black-clothed man's figure directly flew backward, smashing heavily on a huge rock. Almost at the same time, Nietian's figure rushed into the sky, like a huge rock, directly fell, and fiercely stepped on the black-clothed man's face. Boom! With an explosive sound, the black-clothed man's entire face instantly became a bloody mess. You deserve to die. You deserve to die. You deserve to die. In the next moment, Nietian roared, and every time he shouted, his foot would fall. Boom! Boom! Bang! With a muffled sound, the black-clothed man directly turned into a pile of mud. He couldn't be any more dead. This! Wenren Xiang watched from the side, her pair of beautiful eyes trembling, her small face stiff and lifeless, obviously frightened. She couldn't believe the scene in front of her, that the black-clothed man was actually killed by Nietian, just like that. One had to know, that was an expert in the heavenly mandate 5th tier. What happened to Nietian's body? Why did the power of his martial body become so strong in an instant? At this moment, a scream suddenly sounded. Third brother! The other two black-clothed men actually returned. They just happened to see the scene of Nietian's foot falling, saw the scene of their third brother being trampled into mud. You also deserve to die. At this moment, Nietian suddenly raised his head. A pair of incomparably dark eyes looked at the two black-clothed men and said coldly. The two black-clothed men were stunned. The moment they saw Nietian's eyes, they felt as if they were staring into an abyss. There was a feeling of being trapped in it, unable to extricate themselves. What kind of eyes were those? It was too terrifying, like a demon from the depths of the earth. In the moment when the two were stunned, Nietian directly rushed over, like a ferocious beast. Boom, boom, boom. Then, a series of muffled sounds, accompanied by the smell of blood, came out. The two black-clothed men, after not having any chance to fight back, were directly killed by Nietian. They died in the same way as the previous black-clothed man, directly beaten into a pile of flesh and blood. Nietian. Wenren Xiang looked at Nietian from afar, her beautiful eyes trembling. She wanted to open her mouth to speak, but did not know what to say. She had no idea what had happened to Nietian. Why did Nietian, who could not even stand up, become so terrifying in an instant? Chapter 35:17. Don't get close. Wenren Xiang stared at Nietian with trembling eyes. The astonishment in her heart was written all over her face. At this moment, Nietian was too terrifying. He was like a fierce beast, bloodthirsty and violent. His whole body was surging with raging demon chi, and his aura seemed to be able to devour everything, as if he wanted to destroy everything. Bang, bang, bang. However, the demon chi around Nietian didn't weaken at all. Instead, it grew more and more terrifying. Like raging waves, it crashed into the void, looking extremely terrifying. Nietian, are you all right? Wenren Xiang saw Nietian standing in the same spot after killing the two black-robed men. Her eyes were deep like the abyss, emitting a dark aura, giving her a terrifying appearance. She took a step forward and approached Nietian while asking cautiously, "Don't get close to me. Nietian raised his head as the demonic aura emitting from his body skyrocketed, as if he was on fire. You! At that moment, Wenren Xiang's pretty face went blank as soon as she saw Nietian's face clearly. She could see strange black runes covering Nietian's face, and his eyes were surrounded by a dark demonic aura, as if he was a devil that had just walked out from hell. It was as if a powerful force was trying to control Nietian. Wenren Xiang's expression stiffened, not daring to get any closer. She subconsciously backed away. She had no idea what was happening to Nietian, nor what was going to happen next. Ah! At that moment, Nietian suddenly threw his head back and screamed. His face was twisted and distorted, as if he was in great pain. At this moment, he could feel a terrifying power slowly awakening in his body. This power was unbearable, and it was driving him crazy. It was the force that had turned him into a demon, causing him to almost lose control. What was even weirder was that this power seemed somewhat familiar to him. However, he couldn't remember where he had sensed it before. Wenren Xiang looked at Nietian with a terrified expression, completely panicking. She clearly felt that the power of Nietian at this time was much stronger than that of Wenren Tu in the state of Forest Wolf Curse Body. It was hard to imagine how Nietian's martial body could withstand such a terrifying power. Roar! At this time, Nietian suddenly let out a ferocious roar. Like a wild beast, the violent and turbulent demonic aura around his body faintly condensed into a demonic figure. The surrounding space was filled with a suffocating demonic aura. Bang! 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 Following that, an even more shocking scene occurred. Bloody wounds appeared on Nietian's body, and blood gushed out like a fountain. Accompanying the blood was an even stronger demonic aura. A terrifying demonic aura enveloped Nietian's body as if it wanted to devour him. Nietian! Seeing this, Wenren Xiang screamed in fear and immediately rushed over. Kaboom! However, at this time, the demonic aura suddenly surged, and a violent and murderous aura burst out. Wenren Xiang immediately felt a terrifying suppressive force rushing at her, and she was directly sent flying. Wenren Xiang barely managed to stand, but her injuries were extremely serious. Her face was deathly pale, and there were several wounds on her body that were so deep that her bones could be seen. It was as if she had been torn by sharp claws, and blood was flowing everywhere. She ignored her own wounds and raised her head to look at Nietian, who was completely enveloped by the demonic aura and could not be seen. "Don't come any closer." At this time, Nietian's voice suddenly rang out, as if he had not been devoured, and his consciousness was still clear. Wenren Xiang's beautiful eyes trembled, and she retreated, not daring to rashly approach. At this time, she had no idea what was happening to Nietian's body. Amidst the layers of demonic aura, Nietian sat cross-legged. His body was tightly bound by the 9 heavenly shackles. He did not know what would happen next, so he used the heavenly shackles to bind himself first. He could feel the demonic aura in his body rumbling continuously, as if it was going to devour everything. He could vaguely feel that the force seemed to have originated from the heart of the sky, but it was not under the control of the sky's heart. The heart of the sky seemed to have been triggered by some kind of force, or perhaps it had sensed some kind of force, which was why it had unleashed such a ferocious force. Meanwhile, not only was Nietian's martial body suffering a great impact, but his divine sense was also greatly affected. If it were not for the Eternal Night Demon Fox, his divine sense would have already collapsed. Currently, he was suppressing himself with the heavenly shackles and waiting for the demonic aura to slowly weaken. Following this, the demonic aura on Nietian's body became even more ferocious, and the soaring aura was extremely terrifying. Half a day later, the demonic aura surrounding his body had increased to its limit, while the impact on his martial body and divine sense had also reached its limit. The entire canyon was filled with Nietian's heart-wrenching cries of agony. Wenren Xiang could only watch from the side, unable to provide any help to Nietian. Following this, half a day later, the demonic aura on Nietian's body finally began to weaken. During this period, the pain that Nietian had endured was unimaginable to ordinary people. He could feel his body on the verge of collapsing countless times. If it were not for the heavenly shackles and the star origin stones, he would have exploded and died. Following this, 3 days later, the demonic aura surrounding Nietian's body slowly dissipated. Nietian. Wenren Xiang yelled in surprise when she saw the demonic aura around Nietian's body disappearing. I'm fine now. Nietian stood up. His aura was sharp and sharp. You've broken through. Wenren Xiang stared at Nietian's clear eyes and was stunned for a moment. She finally reacted after a while and exclaimed. She discovered that Nietian's aura was much stronger than before, and his aura was sharper, as if he had been reborn. Nietian nodded with a faint smile. After 4 days of life and death struggle, not only did he survive, but his strength had also broken through to the second level of heavenly rhythm. More importantly, all his injuries were completely healed. Even the demonic eye and heavenly punishment godly reversal were completely healed. At this moment, he really felt like he had been reborn. But this time, he was more concerned about something else, the source of the demonic aura. During these 4 days, he repeatedly sensed the demonic aura and finally confirmed that the demonic aura came from the heaven-punishing demon heart. That's right, he was very sure that the demonic aura came from the heaven-punishing demon heart. He had met the Emperor of the Netherworld several times, so he was not unfamiliar with the aura of the heaven-punishing demon heart. But the demonic aura he released earlier was even more intense. And when he was enduring the demonic aura, the heaven-punishing demon heart and the Emperor of the Netherworld appeared in his mind. That face was a bit unfamiliar, but he was very sure that it was the Emperor of the Netherworld. Why would the Emperor of the Netherworld appear here? Chapter 35:18. Chapter 35:13. Demon Chi Formation. The heaven-punishing demon heart? How is that possible? Nietian frowned. Although the demon Chi in the canyon was hidden very deeply, and its aura was different from the heaven-punishing demon Chi that he had sensed before, the deeper demonic aura would not change. The canyon was indeed filled with heaven-punishing demon Chi. However, this was too strange, and Nietian could not figure out. Could the Emperor of the Netherworld have been here before? Nietian guessed, but he felt that it was impossible. Even if the Emperor of the Netherworld had been here before, he should not have left behind such a terrifying heaven-punishing demon Chi. Even if the Emperor of the Netherworld had become a sage in a realm, his strength should not have been so strong. If the Emperor of the Netherworld was really strong enough to release such a terrifying demon Chi, then Evil Moon Wolf's men would not have been able to catch him. However, if the demon Chi in the canyon was not left behind by the Emperor of the Netherworld, who could it be? The previous owner of the heaven-punishing devil heart? Nietian suddenly thought of something. His brow furrowed, and his expression flickered. Items like the Star Origin Stone and the heaven-punishing demon heart had more than one owner. The Emperor of the Netherworld might not have been the original owner of the heaven-punishing demon heart. Before him, the heaven-punishing demon heart might have had other owners. In that case, the demon Chi in the canyon could have been left behind by the previous owner of the heaven-punishing demon heart. However, if that was the case, why did the Emperor of the Netherworld's figure appear in Nietian's mind when the demon Chi was oppressing him? Everything was like a deep mystery, and Nietian was completely confused. What confused him even more was why he could sense the heaven-punishing demon Chi and even activate the power of the Heart of the Sky. Could the heaven-punishing demon heart and the Heart of the Sky be related in some way? Nietian frowned as his expression changed. However, he could not come up with anything after thinking for a long time, so he gave up. Let's go. After a while, Nietian became cold and prepared to leave immediately. Nietian, look. At this time, Wenren Xiang walked over with a strange flower in her hand and handed it to Nietian. What's this? Nietian was taken aback. and his attention was immediately drawn to the flower. The flower wasn't very big. It was roughly the size of an adult's fist. However, its appearance was very strange. Its black petals gave off a baleful aura. The entire flower looked like a wolf's head. "What do you think?" Wenren Xiang laughed, looking very happy. "Werewolf flower." Nietian suddenly thought of something and exclaimed. Previously, Wenren Xiang had told him that Wolf's Night Mountain produced a type of third-grade holy material called the werewolf flower. Looking at the appearance of this flower, it was undoubtedly a werewolf flower. Yes. Wenren Xiang nodded heavily. She took out a spatial ring and said proudly, "There are dozens of them in the ring. Where did you find it?" Nietian was taken aback, his face filled with confusion. "From the bodies of those 3 fellows." Wenren Xiang laughed and pointed at the flesh that had already begun to rot not far away. Nietian's eyes flickered, and he immediately understood. It turned out that Wenren Xiang had found the werewolf flower from the 3 men in black. "Nietian, do you know who they are?" At this time, Wenren Xiang looked at Nietian and asked with a strange expression. "You know?" Nietian was slightly stunned and asked. "They are from the 7 Wolves mercenary group." Wenren Xiang nodded, looking a little flustered. 7 Wolves mercenary group. Nietian's eyes narrowed when he heard this name. When he first arrived at Wolf's Night Mountain, he also encountered 3 men in black who had lusted after Ning Ziyu and died at Nietian's hands. One of the men in black had threatened Nietian and said that they were from the 7 Wolves mercenary group. "Is this 7 Wolves mercenary group very strong?" Nietian frowned and asked. "Yes." Wenren Xiang nodded and said, "The 7 Wolves mercenary group is one of the 2 largest mercenary groups in Wolf's Night Mountain. I heard that even the evil Moon Heavenly Wolf group doesn't dare to provoke them. Most of those mercenaries are cruel and ruthless people. They are active in Wolf's Night Mountain all year round, killing all kinds of sacred beasts." Nietian looked at Wenren Xiang and couldn't help but laugh. "Will there be trouble if we kill people from the 7 Wolves mercenary group?" "I don't think so." Wenren Xiang was a little uncertain and said, "They deserve their deaths. As long as we don't say anything, no one will know how they died." "Yes." Nietian nodded and faintly smiled. He didn't stay any longer and immediately left. After 4 days of life and death struggle, Nietian felt that the demon energy in the surrounding space was still there, but it was no longer oppressing him. His martial body seemed to have adapted to the demon energy. Half a day later, Nietian and Wenren Xiang arrived at the other end of the canyon. They were about to leave. "Wait." But at this time, Nietian suddenly stopped and looked at a mountain wall high up in the sky. "Nietian, did you find something?" Wenren Xiang looked at Nietian with a puzzled expression. She didn't know what had happened to him. "Wait for me." Nietian nodded slightly and took a step forward. His figure shot up into the sky. His face was gloomy and his eyes were a little strange. He sensed a strange aura in the air, which the heart of the sky and his body had sensed. However, the strange thing was that the surroundings were empty, as if there was nothing at all. "What's going on?" Nietian was puzzled. He took a deep breath and calmed down, then began to carefully sense the space around him. A while later, his eyes flickered as he stared at a spot on the mountain wall and murmured, "It's here." After saying this, a sword intent surged out from his palm and shrouded the area. Bang! The moment the sword intent fell, the originally empty place seemed to have been hit, and the mountain wall next to it shook a little. Following this, a black vortex gradually became clearer in the sky. The black vortex floated in the air like a dark abyss, emitting a strong demon aura that spread across the sky. "The demon aura is coming from this vortex." Nietian stared at the demon vortex with trembling eyes. He could sense an unusually strong heaven-punishing demon aura, as if the center of the vortex contained an endless amount of demon aura. "I know." At that moment, the ghost monarch's voice could be heard. He let out an excited cry and said, "This is a demonic formation, and this vortex is the eye of the formation." "A demon formation?" Nietian was startled when he heard the ghost monarch's voice. Chapter 35:19. Nietian exclaimed as he sensed the demonic aura. However, before he could react, his entire body was shrouded by the demonic aura. At that instant, he once again felt a suffocating pressure, causing his expression to darken. Could it be that the torture from before was going to happen again? Nietian. Wenren Xiang screamed in shock when she saw the scene in the sky. However, she did not approach Nietian this time. Nietian hovered in midair. His entire body was shrouded by the demonic aura, making it impossible to see his figure. At that instant, he could feel that the heart of the sky in his body had gone berserk, unleashing waves of energy to attack his martial body. However, the feeling did not last for long. A moment later, the demonic aura in the air was completely absorbed by Nietian's body, as if he had merged with the heart of the sky. Everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Nietian frowned, a confused look on his face. He tried to sense his martial body, but did not find anything strange. It was as if the demonic aura had merged with his body and disappeared. Moreover, he could not even sense the heart of Hao Ian now. After the heart of the sky had merged with him, he rarely felt the presence of the heart of the sky. Only when the heart of the sky had awakened did he feel the presence of the heart of the sky. This time, the heart of the sky had appeared once again under the stimulation of the demonic aura. However, the heart of the sky had disappeared after merging with the demonic aura, leaving him confused. If the heart of the sky had awakened, why could he not feel it? Nietian, are you all right? Wenren Xiang came to Nietian's side and asked worriedly. I'm fine. Nietian smiled faintly and stopped thinking about it. He knew too little about the heart of the sky. Once the matter with the Emperor of the Underworld was settled, he planned to immediately go find Zhong Mingyu and ask more about the heart of the sky. Then, Nietian didn't stay in the canyon and headed directly to Wolf Knight City. Half an hour later, a majestic ancient city appeared in front of them. The ancient city in front of him was very vast. It was several times larger than the Myriad Treasures Mall that Nietian had seen before. From a distance, it looked like a giant beast lying on the ground. Nietian, this is Wolf Knight City. Wenren Xiang looked at the city in front of her, unable to conceal the excitement in her heart. This was the first time she had come to Wolf Knight City. To the people of Wolf Knight Mountain, Wolf Knight City was like a legend. Let's enter the city. Nietian nodded, his eyes shining with a sharp light. He came here to save people. After the two entered the city, they walked on the wide streets of Wolf Knight City. There weren't many people around, and there were many young warriors who should be here to participate in the Wolf Knight contest. Wenren Xiang, how much do you know about the Wolf Knight contest? At this time, Nietian looked at Wenren Xiang and asked. The Wolf Knight contest is a martial arts competition for warriors under the age of 10,000. I heard that those who can enter the top 10 can directly join the Evil Moon Wolf and be nurtured by the Evil Moon Wolf. Wenren Xiang nodded slightly, obviously not knowing much about the Wolf Knight contest. Nietian nodded and didn't ask much. Next, the two came to a restaurant in the city and found a remote place to sit. Nietian wanted to inquire about the Wolf Knight contest from this place, and at the same time, he wanted to find out about the wolf slaves. However, at this time, most of the people were talking about the Wolf Knight contest. There were still a few days before the start of the Wolf Knight contest, but the geniuses of the entire Wolf Knight Mountain had already gathered in Wolf Knight City. I heard that the Wolf Emperor will personally appear for the Wolf Knight contest this time, and he will personally choose 9 Green Wolf Lords. I wonder who will have the honor of being chosen by the Wolf Emperor. Someone sighed, his eyes burning with anticipation. 9 Green Wolf Lords? In the past, didn't only the champion of the Wolf Knight contest obtain the title of Green Wolf Lord? Why are there 9 Green Wolf Lords this time? The crowd discussed excitedly. That's right. I heard that the Green Wolf Lords will become the Wolf King in the future, and they might even become the next Wolf Emperor. Could it be that the Wolf Emperor personally appeared this time to choose a successor? Who knows? In the past, the Wolf Emperor never showed himself, but he actually showed up this time. This should make the Wolf Knight contest even more intense. Wolf's Night is a battle for hegemony. Only the most talented martial artists can become the Green Wolf Lord. And these people are destined to be the ones to control Wolf's Night Mountain in the future. Who do you think is most likely to become the Green Wolf Lord this time? I heard that 5 of the Wolf Night 9 wolves are participating. I'm afraid that the 5 of them have already locked onto the title of the 9 Green Wolf Masters. It's just that I don't know who will ultimately become the head of the Wolf Night 9 wolves. I heard that Su Kwanga from the Su clan is known as the God of Spears. I think he has a high chance of becoming the champion. Not necessarily. I heard that Qin Sangqiong from the Qin clan has awakened the immemorial sacred body, and In Liujia from the 7 Wolves mercenary group has mastered the legendary 7 Wolves Fatal Strike. They are all very terrifying figures. There's also Tai Wushang from the Tai clan. His sword principle has reached the Oracle realm, and his profound iron cold sword is extremely domineering. Few people in the younger generation can compete with him. The crowd discussed endlessly, and each of them had their own candidates. The scene was very lively. There were indeed many geniuses in the Wolf Night Mountain this time, and there were countless amazing geniuses. When Ye Tian heard the crowd's discussion, he faintly smiled. It seemed that if he were to participate in the Wolf Night competition, his opponent would be very strong. Not to mention others, just those warriors who were also 9 wolves like Su Kwanga were enough to pose a threat to Nye Tian. Nye Tian, I think that the champion of the Wolf Night competition will definitely be you. At this time, Wenren Xiang suddenly looked at Nye Tian and said with a serious expression. Her voice was very soft, but it was still heard by a warrior not far away. Ha ha! There are really all kinds of birds in a big forest. A mere second-level Heaven Rhythm warrior is actually dreaming of becoming the champion of the Wolf Night competition. What a joke. The warrior laughed out loud, not concealing his contempt for Nye Tian. His voice was very loud, and it immediately attracted everyone's attention. This silver-haired brat wants to become the champion of the Wolf Night competition? Everyone turned around and looked at Nye Tian, laughing out loud. Nye Tian frowned. Even though he didn't care about these people's comments, his expression was somewhat ugly at the moment. Wenren Xiang's face was filled with embarrassment. She regretted saying such words here. Let's go. Nye Tian faintly smiled, stood up, and prepared to leave.